We should be good to go now.
All right. Welcome to the February 12th, 2026 Planning Board meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion to open the meeting with a vote. Can I have a motion, please? Motion made by Bill, seconded by Steve.
Yep.
And this vote will start with Steve.
Steve, I.
Bill, I.
Bill, aye.
Marty, I.
So that vote is 4-0, and we are now open. And if we could start with the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Rob, we've got a couple of requests for continuance. I'm gonna recommend we clear some of those first. The first item that was on the agenda was Blackstone Street. Do we have an update on that?
Yeah, so Blackstone Street, we're still waiting on the follow-up peer review from Beals and Thomas. They're slated to have that to us next week. So with that, there's not much new information to discuss, so the applicant requested a continuance, and that continuance is for next meeting, so February 26th, which we should be ready to discuss that new review letter. And the deadline's end of March, so we got plenty of time there for the decision deadline.
We have both of those in writing.
We do.
That's a yes. Thank you. All right. Are there any questions on the board? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to continue to February 26th. And I guess before I do that, what's our agenda for the 26th? Is it open right now?
It is. There is an item on the agenda that I anticipate is going to be continued again, and that's the Hartford Ave Indian properties.
Okay, and we're pretty sure that Blackstone Street will be ready to go for the 26th then.
Yes, yep,
All right, then I'll
very confident.
entertain a motion to continue to February 26th, Blackstone Street project.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Marty, second please.
Second.
Second by Steve. Start the vote with Marty.
Marty, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, I.
Steve, I.
And so that passes 4-0, and the continuance is granted. All right, we'll skip to 455 Hartford Avenue, and Rob, can you give us an update on that one, please?
Yeah, so 455 Hartford Ave, we actually did receive the final peer review letter for that project, which came back clean, which is great. The applicant submitted to conservation about the same time that we received that revised letter from the peer reviewer. And there were some tweaks that needed to be made related to some of the buffer zones. So very minor tweaks, and those plans were revised and resubmitted this Tuesday, which was past the deadline for receiving items. So I recommended that the applicant continue to February 26th for, discussion of any outlying items. What I may do for this one, just for the sake of time, you don't need to act on it because you have plenty of time. This one has a decision deadline at the end of March, but I am planning on beginning to draft the decision. And if you feel comfortable after the next meeting, we can start discussing it for the sake of time. But I'm just to be proactive, just to let you know. All right.
Okay, proactive is always good.
Yep.
All right, we've got that in writing as well.
Yeah, so continuation would be February 26th, and then the deadline extension, which it's the same as it was March 31st. So.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Bill, seconded by? Second by Marty. And now start the vote with Marty.
Marty, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, on.
Okay, so that passes 4-0 to pass the continuance on Hartford Avenue. All right, so the next item we'll go back to is 180 Main Street. And we'll entertain a motion to open the discussion on that. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Made by Bill, seconded by Marty. Start with, vote with Marty.
Marty, aye.
Bill, aye.
Bill, aye.
Okay, and Phil, aye as well. So it's 4-0. 4-0. We'll start the conversation there. So I believe we were going to talk about public safety tonight. Tonight.
Yep, a couple things, public safety, and then Jesse is online as well on Zoom. I don't know why it's not showing, but that's better.
Yeah,
Um,
I understand there's been some correspondence with the chiefs and the applicant. The last one, last one from the chiefs was on the 13th and 14th of January. I saw an email.
yeah,
that the board has.
Yeah, I think what would probably be best is, if the applicant wants to give just a quick overview of where things stand. If you have any questions for the chiefs, and then Jesse as well for the utility info. I will say from our perspective, or from my perspective for staff, just so the public is aware as well. So public safety, obviously, that's a very big aspect of the special permit. I know that there's ongoing coordination with the applicant and the town, which I imagine is still going to continue. There's been numerous concerns that have been mentioned during numerous public hearings, and now is a good time to ask questions and maybe get some feedback from the applicant and our staff. And then from the utility perspective, there's really three main utilities that we review on the planning side of things, and that's water, sewer, and then stormwater. Stormwater is being handled still with that peer review that's ongoing. So we're not really going to be discussing that tonight, but I know that there's a lot of discussion in earlier hearings about water capacity and sewer capacity and what exactly is going to happen, because obviously this development is quite large. So Jesse can probably just give a quick overview of the two reviews that we had. We had Beta Group do a peer review for water, a water study, and then Kleinfelder do a sewer study. So maybe we can start with the applicant if they want to give any information. Probably we can start with public safety, segue into utilities, and then, if the board or if the public have any questions, comments, concerns, we can go from there.
The applicant likes to join us. And so as far as new information that you'd like to bring up tonight, what do we have that's fairly new? It looks like a presentation.
It's through the chair. So our understanding based on the last hearing was that you wanted the police, fire, public safety officials to hear and react to the current plans. They had not been involved with the prior testimony necessarily, although I think they've probably seen some of this. This will be a rollout, a recap of three aspects of the project. First, to refresh everyone's recollection of what is proposed for access and why. Secondly, to recap the project impacts to Rentham Road, with emphasis on understanding whether or not a third driveway would be feasible along that section of road. And the third aspect of it really had to do with on-site circulation and some changes that were made to the site plan that enhanced the ability for fire and emergency response and circulation within the property itself. So it's really just a recap of those three. The slides, the board has seen many of these slides, but again, at the board's direction, now that we have public safety officials present, we can recap those and solicit input.
Great. Why don't you take us away on the slide there?
Great. Okay, so again, for the record, Robert Misha, we're MDM Transportation Consultants. I'll go through the slides in a rather relatively quick manner here and really leave it to more to questions. So Rob, if you can just advance. I mentioned the three topical areas that we're going to be covering already. And I'll emphasize that the driveway itself was the subject of many iterations and input that we did receive from police early on in the process to inform a design that would include a signal that would be located in an area of Payne Street where ample sight lines could be provided. We've since added some turn lanes to that based on input through the peer review process and from the police department in some earlier consultation with them. And we know that there's a crest in the road in Payne Street that we will aim to reduce or lower to improve the alignment of the roadway in that area in general. Uh, Relative to the driveway, and we'll review what that looks like in a moment, we also propose the conversion of the existing driveway for New England Country Club, which is at the top of the hill, to an emergency use only driveway, and the specific controls that would be placed there are still subject to confirmation and approval of the fire department, but essentially that would be a gated location that would provide a secondary means of access to the property for emergency response purposes. Now, the second point really relates to Rentham Road. It was an early question that was raised by the fire department in particular as to whether or not it would be feasible to provide a driveway connection from Rentham Road into the property. So we spent some time looking at that and understanding whether or not that was feasible, what the impacts would be. And we also had some time to understand the relationship of several of the responding stations in and around the area to get a better lens on how the site would most likely be serviced from various locations. So we'll recap each of those points. And finally, there have been site changes on site. There is now a third means of emergency access and circulation built into the project that we'll review, which we think is to the benefit of everyone. So the next slide, starting with the driveway orientation of the board, and this is something I presented last hearing. The driveway at the foot of Payne Street has been modified so that it introduces a central landscape median, if you will, and a single exit lane with the ability to convert that median into a second lane if necessary, subject to monitoring over time as units come online, and we can actually measure the performance of the driveway. That was all done in concert with peer review. Peer review found that to be an appropriate solution and one that they endorse. The driveway also incorporates the pedestrian elements that allow folks to get into the site or leave the site and have a controlled crossing point, which we presented to the board at last hearing. The next slide presents some of the safety-related accommodations for that signal, which really relate to a close review of the crash records that were provided to us by the police department for an extended period. I think we have 5 years of local crash records now along Payne Street, and it became very apparent that where the crashes are occurring really is at the top of the hill near that curve. And they all involve single vehicle crashes that occur between midnight and 5 in the morning. I believe some of the causal factors related to that had to do with visibility mainly, and the fact that these are occurring in the early morning hours when driver attention or inattention may be a factor as well. And so some of the features that we proposed here, in addition to the location of the driveway and the future signalization of the driveway, would be the placement of speed advisory signs along the road to help meter speeds. Those types of signs have been shown to be effective in reducing travel speeds by about 4 miles an hour, what's known as the 85th percentile travel speed. And in addition to that, to place advanced red signal ahead indicators at the top of the hill, if you will, near that curve, and additional traffic treatments on the road itself, and improved pavement markings, high visibility pavement markings, chevrons, and other features that really enhance the visibility of that particular corner as you're coming up. We have indicated in this particular drawing the ability to far exceed the minimum sightline criteria based on even the highest speeds that we've recorded along Payne Street. We know that we've achieved a sightline standard that's roughly twice what's required to ensure safe operations of the driveway. And the driveway itself now includes a northbound exclusive right turn lane, which is something that the police department had indicated a preference for and that peer review suggested as well. So that's now part of the plan. The next slide, really, and there's a lot of detail in the slide. I'll just point out that there is a crest curve along that area of where the proposed driveway is to be located. The concept here is that itself does not create a sightline issue per se, but there is the ability to lower that and improve the alignment of the roadway. We can take out some of that crest and make an improvement there. That's what this shows. Again, it was all subject to peer review and the concurrence with peer review. So as we turn our attention from Payne Street to Rentham Road, we've presented to the board and responded to peer review that the project impact, the reliance for trip accommodation for the project is very low on Rentham Road. Rentham Road is not going to be a primary route that's used by residents of this development. We expect that during traditional peak hours when volumes are highest in the area that the number of additional trips to or from Rentham Road will be less than 20. The vast majority of trips are really going to be on 126. They're going to go south. There will be some limited number that use Rentham Road, but it's not going to be a primary route. So there's really not an inherent need to have a third driveway from a capacity standpoint. And as we've presented to the board at last hearing, there are proposed modifications to the signal that will actually allow it to function better than it does today, even with the added traffic from this project. There'll be a substantial reduction in the amount of vehicle queuing that occurs on Payne Street on that northbound approach, and the ability to have the signal cycle more frequently and more efficiently. So as it relates to Rentham Road, really the question was, is there ability to provide a connection to the site for emergency vehicle response purposes? As we've currently proposed the site, which has the 2 access points on Payne Street, it's our belief that design complies with Massachusetts Fire Code regulations for dual access to the property. It's compliant with NFPA 1 guidance. There are many examples of that in Massachusetts for similar projects. As it relates to the third driveway, there are substantial impediments to actually building that. So there was a very detailed assessment that was requested by the peer reviewer that they wanted to understand where that driveway, if it were feasible, could be provided, and what its characteristics would look like, the profile of the roadway, the environmental impacts of permitting it and building it. And what we've determined is that there are substantial wetland and riverfront impacts associated with it. That driveway is it's roughly 4,000 feet away from the intersection of where Rentham and Payne come together, right near the fire station. It's substantially further away than the 2 access points here that we're showing and proposing on Payne Street. So the potential driveway itself is, if you will, not aligned with the likely response routes that would be needed to go to the site, which I'll review in a minute. It would involve a crossing of what I call a canyon. There's a substantial drop in the topography there that presents more than a 30-foot grade differential from the wetland systems to where the driveway would be. It would essentially be an entire bridge structure And that structure and the impacts would represent more than a 25,000 square foot impact to wetlands and riverfront area for very limited benefit. We've determined, and I believe that peer review has acknowledged that there are extreme conditions and impacts that would be created by that crossing, and it's not something that is feasible for the project as a result. So the next slide just puts a little closer lens on that. Uses the next one, slide after this, Rob. To present kind of the context for this analysis, we've shown the site in yellow on this aerial diagram, and you'll see in the central part of the diagram, there's a call out for where Bellingham Station 1 is located at the intersection of Payne and Rentham Road, and that's in the central portion of this drawing. And you'll see a dashed line that runs along Rentham Road to the east, eventually making a right turn, if you will, into the property where the property has frontage, very limited frontage along Rentham Road, right? That's the location of where the potential driveway was evaluated. You'll also see on this the location of other fire stations in the area. So the Bellingham headquarters station is 4.7 miles away to the north. The mutual aid response stations would include the Blackstone station, which is just over a mile away to the west. And on the Woonsocket side, there was mutual aid response station, which is also just over a mile to the south of the property. Right, so it's among these various locations that potential response would occur, whether through direct involvement with Bellingham Fire or through mutual aid response from some of these other stations. And so what this shows is that there are stations north, south, and west of this property that would have the ability to get to the site. And the first point of what I'd call a gateway to this would be the intersection of Payne and Rentham Road. And that would lead most directly to the two driveways that are proposed along Payne Street, and less directly along an alternate route that would carry you some 4,000 feet to the north or east to where this potential driveway would be. The next slide shows a little more detail on that. This shows the relationship of that gateway intersection at Payne and Rentham Road, and it shows that to travel along Rentham Road to a potential driveway connection, which would really only connect to the very easterly corner of the most easterly building, would involve a travel distance of some more than 4,000 feet. Whereas the connections along Payne Street would be far more direct. In fact, it's half that distance and would bring you more into the central part of the site itself. Now, the next slide, understanding that we want to enhance the ability as much as possible for fire and emergency response within the property. We've of course got the two driveways, but once you're on the site from either driveway, we've introduced a third means of circulating within the property that would bring you much closer to the easterly building portion of the site. So in blue, one of those connections on the site plan brings you to the westerly buildings directly from that frontage road, the driveway itself. The central portion of the site would be directly accessible by the yellow route. And the new route would really follow the existing paved way to the clubhouse that would be extended so that it went through some woodland area and brought you out to some of the more easterly buildings. The next slide shows some details on that third green route. You'll see in the lower left corner of this drawing where that clubhouse circulation aisle ends, and in a blue format, the alignment of a new driveway connection, which follows an existing path that would eventually bring you over to what is it called? Building, is that building 5, Mark, or 6?
That's E.
Building E, east And so, to the extent there needed to be a more direct response to some of the usability buildings, which would have been the premise of a Rentham Road connection, for instance, that's what this achieves. The next slide really just speaks to the design of the driveway and some of the internal circulation aspects of the site, where we've tested the fire apparatus by Bellingham Ladder 1. So Rob, if you could advance one slide. We've conducted an auto turn analysis, a model using that vehicle, making various sweep movements to and from Payne Street at that proposed driveway location that shows that the geometry, the lane widths, the alignment all facilitate the movement of a vehicle, emergency apparatus vehicle, to or from the Woonsocket side, and on the next slide, to or from the north, from the headquarters location by a ladder truck, or the mutual aid response from the Blackstone side. So all of the geometry works, is efficient. The next slide really presents a broader view of the same type of analysis. This is an auto turn analysis that was prepared by Bowler Engineering, that really looks at each of the internal circulation connections. Although it's hard to see at this scale, it shows the movements at each one of the colored connections that I mentioned earlier, blue, yellow, and green. And it indicates that for each one of those, as well as the internal circulation aisles of the project, that all of the dimensions of the aisles, where the parking is located, they all accommodate the swept path of that largest responding vehicle, the tower vehicle. So from a response perspective, from a circulation perspective, I think the developer has made strides here to really open up the site and facilitate accessibility for all of the buildings here, to the extent emergency response was provided. Understanding that it's just simply not viable to provide a connection from Rentham Road, based on a very detailed assessment that's been submitted through the peer review process. And finally, just a recap of mitigation. I've already mentioned some of these, just to the benefit of police and fire. I mentioned the rephasing and optimization of the signal at Pulaski Boulevard, and the implementation of some safety-related improvements, following the completion of a road safety audit. That will be a substantial improvement in capacity and operations. At Rentham Road, nearest Fire Station 1, we would enhance the existing do not block the box signage there with physical markings, high reflectivity markings that make it abundantly clear that anyone who needs to queue on Payne Street on the approach to Pulaski should do so outside of that box. We have video, we've reviewed literally hours of video for that very location that indicates that by and large, people do create the gaps that are necessary if they need to queue on Payne Street to allow folks on Rentham Road to access Payne Street. We know that it's not a perfect system, but
Could you repeat that one more time? So if you're coming off Rentham Road
yes,
onto Payne Street,
yeah.
you're saying that basically what the
People are allowing or creating gaps in that opening, right? So that if you're approaching the Pulaski signal and there's a long queue that's developing from that signal, which we know happens today, that folks who are making turns from Rentham Road, more often than not, have the ability to go through that queue because people are allowing that to happen. They're allowing a gap in that traffic. That's consistent with the signs that are there today, which says, please don't block the intersection. We think that that can be enhanced. We think that you can put pavement markings down there and enhance signing that will reinforce that if you're going to have to stop at the signal, which is abundantly clear to anyone approaching, when you see the back of a vehicle in front of them, that they're not to block that zone, if you will. We very carefully looked at video. We tried to understand in great detail how that functions. We think it can be enhanced through that measure. On Payne Street, I've already talked about the driver feedback signs, the high-vis reflectorized pavement markings at the top of the hill, signal ahead sign, chevron markings, etc. Sidewalk improvements, we've talked about at the last hearing. And finally, all of this would be subject to transportation monitoring upon the phased opening of the project as it proceeds. So that's what we have for an overview, a recap. Glad to answer any specific questions the board or police fire may have.
Okay, there was, a lot there.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna kick it off with, public safety access. They're proposing two entrances on Main Street that are they too close to provide what you need for public safety? And that's a loaded question, but that's what it comes down, that's what the conversation really goes to.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not gonna answer anything solid tonight, I need to sit and digest those plans. I wish we, public safety, had gotten those plans a week or so prior to this meeting, so we really could have taken it. We're just getting slapped right now and wanting us to answer. I'm not gonna answer until I have time to sit down and I need to digest it. I need to look through it and go through it slowly. There's a lot there,
There's a lot there.
there's a lot there.
There's a lot.
So
Let me go to another topic then, mutual aid.
Good.
The mutual aid conversation that they were presenting was indicating that it was basically Blackstone and Woonsocket would be the mutual aid that would come and help Bellingham if that was the case.
so let me clear that up.
Please,
Nicely. The station you're talking about in Blackstone, that's a mile away, is an unmanned volunteer station. There is nobody there. Their station is downtown Blackstone. It's a lot further away. It's on the other side of Woonsocket. Woonsocket Fire Department does 14,000 calls a year. We spend more time in the city of Woonsocket than the city of Woonsocket spends in the town of Bellingham. For us to rely on mutual aid on a regular basis is not gonna happen. We do use them on a major incident on that side of town, but not till we go to a working fire. We are not gonna bring them in for those smells and bells and medicals because they don't always have the apparatus either. They're doing 14,000 runs in a poor city. I'm gonna say it again, 14,000 runs in a poor city. Please let that sink in, okay? You're talking about an unmanned station on Blackstone. Rentham Station, even though the Rentham town line is less than a mile away, their station is on the complete other side in downtown Rentham. We cover that side of Rentham out of our Rentham Road station. So I want to make that very clear. The other piece too, we're talking about that intersection. I don't care how you cut it, that intersection is a mess. First thing in the morning and at night. We cannot get out of that station with the current traffic that's there. The way that island is configured, the way that our bay doors come out the front, coming out the side. Yes, okay. People may read the box, but I've been on that apron when people don't read the box and they park in front of that intersection. We cannot get out. You're going to be adding another, and no one said to me yet how many more vehicles we're adding. We haven't heard that, or I haven't heard that yet. That's going to, in the morning and at night, add to that additional flow. I'm gonna stop there. I really want to see the plans. I need a set of plans, these revised plans, to sit down and review them and add good comments. I'm not gonna just off the cuff tonight, but I'm sorry.
okay, no, I know they've provided some feedback
Yeah.
already, so. Can we certainly get the chief's full sets of plans and
Just what you have tonight. I just need to see what you
also
have tonight.
PowerPoints from tonight as well?
Yes. I just want to see the updates that we saw tonight. I have the other plans. I need to see what was presented tonight so I can take time to digest it. I need to go through it. I need to look at it. I do have one other question, and I'm not sure who to give this to. So we're talking about the second entrance, the current Payne Street entrance is going to be into the country club is going to be an emergency access for us. What is that grade percentage from that upper road down into your project? Is it over 10%?
And from which point?
So the current entrance now into Payne Street,
Yep.
into the country club. I know when you go in where the clubhouse sits, you're talking about a second access road going from that upper country club down into your property. What's that percentage of grade?
On the current plans, it's 10%, and we're gonna revise it so that it's compliant with the 8%.
10% we won't accept.
Understood,
Okay, so just want to make that very clear, because you're gonna remember, our ladder truck is gonna get hung up right there.
understood.
Can I just add to that for a moment?
Sure.
I know people who live in that area. I think you're being very kind to 10%. There was an accident there where the state police came out several years ago. Indicated the range was between, I believe, 12 and 15%.
I'm talking about the section of roadway that we proposed within the property that hasn't been built yet.
Yeah, we're talking
A lot of
about,
people coming down the hill.
Yeah.
Bill, inside. So if you go
Okay.
into the current, entrance point or entrance
Yep.
and egress to the Main Street Country Club. Soon as you drive in, the clubhouse sits up on the hill a little bit. Over to the left, there's another proposed road that goes down that steep hill into their property.
Yep.
That's what and the code doesn't allow more than 10%. Actually, it's no more than 8%. I apologize. It's no more than 8%.
I also think we need to be concerned about the pitch on Payne Street. I know we've all dealt with it, but you're talking about putting signs there to slow people down. At a meeting, 2 or 3 meetings ago, you indicated those signs may lower the average speed 4 or 5 miles an hour, which is still above the speed limit. Did anyone else recall that? So I think the mitigation, I think at this point, needs to be reviewed. But I want to hold off until we hear from the audience.
So if I can just add one more quick point, I want to back up to the mutual aid thing that's rattling around in my brain. Again, it is not our neighboring community's responsibility to handle the call volume. The daily call volume should be handled by the town of Bellingham and the Bellingham Residential Services, whether it's police, fire, or EMS. It's not. I'm gonna be very clear. Franklin's, Renthams, Blackstones, Woonsockets, Lincoln, North Smithfield, that is not their responsibility to be handling the daily calls in the town of Bellingham. And I'll stop there.
We've got three. I'd like to ask a question through the chair, just,
Yes.
we're not suggesting that we're relying on those. We're simply providing some context for where other stations that could respond are located. Would the primary response by tower vehicle be from the primary station?
Be from headquarters.
Right,
Yep.
so that's the 4.7 miles.
Mhm.
Okay,
That is correct.
right.
And that gives all this footpath analysis. That's why I really need to sit down and look at those plans. Everything has to be based off of that truck. I saw you did that, but I need to physically up close look at that and break that down.
Yeah, it makes
I
sense.
think I saw an earlier email, that there was also concern about the ladder truck being able to reach the top of the.
Yep, that's a whole other thing we have to discuss too. It's called a scrub area. So the further you're looking at 5 to 6 story buildings, unless something changes. Okay, we're gonna base it off of 6 stories. Our ladder is 107 feet rear mount. So what we call is a scrub area. So where that truck sets up, the distance from the top of the building to the furthest point out that our ladder reaches, I need to see and know what you're going to be. Because yeah, we can set up in the parking lot, but if we can't reach 3 rungs or 4 rungs above the roof, which is our standard, which is taught to all of our people, how you set the ladder up, we can't reach the building. So nobody's been able to tell me how far green space is gonna be there. What's our parking lot width? What width do we have to set our truck up? Our outrigger is 12 feet. It's a short jack truck. However, we still gotta worry about the reach, and it's called a scrub. Us to reach the side of the building where we set up. Scrub area.
And I'd just say if I could, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everybody for your time tonight and over the past 2 years as we've all worked together on this. And I appreciate all the members of the public taking time out of their personal schedule to be here. And, I just want to say we completely acknowledge the priority of public safety. And, we're very grateful for the input that everybody has provided over the past 2 years. We've endeavored to reflect it, to a large degree. And we may not be there yet. It may not be perfect. And I think this type of feedback, both tonight and to the extent, when you have a chance to review it with a bit more time, it's something we want to continue to take a very deliberate and measured approach to. So, I think that we're not here to say it's perfect tonight. And again, I know Bob and Bowler and yourself and your team and all of the training, among your staff, there's a mosaic there that needs to continue to be calibrated. So, we appreciate the input and, we certainly want to follow up on it in detail and take it seriously.
There's no one else in this town that's gonna be more impacted than the 2 agencies sitting here.
Yep.
Nobody. I wanna be very clear, nobody. I might as well park an ambulance there. Because the data that we even received on the amount of calls, There is no project in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that has 800 units in it. Closest one I can find is 600. I've talked to many fire chiefs. I don't even want to speak for the PD because I know Chief Fitzgerald's done his work too. We put blasts out. No one has a project of this size and can give me specific data on what impact it is going to have. I'm using 2022 data from the National EMS Service of what the potential call volume is going to add to what we already do. And
Yeah,
that
that's why
station,
we're here to work
and
together.
that
with you guys.
station only operates with 3 people.
Again, that's
So
why we're here to.
one of the biggest concerns I had going into tonight was the methodologies that I was seeing in the emails about the number of calls. It seemed like there was number of calls that you guys were estimated, and then there was our public safety experts sitting here had a different opinion of what those numbers should be. So that was one of my biggest concerns, is the methodologies were completely different. And I guess I was looking to find out, I heard the fire chief mention where he was getting his numbers from. But I mean, those are the numbers that we're gonna be looking for, is solid numbers that they are agreeing on the methodology on. And I would like to see that you guys come to the meeting of the minds is with them as far as their numbers are concerned. And they're the public safety experts in this town. They're the ones we rely on. So that's where this phone number's going. So.
And we completely agree. And I think, I'm not exactly sure the analysis you're referring to, but
Well, it's the letters that go back and forth. So there were letters.
and again, we didn't bring that tonight to discuss, and I think, Rob's familiar with some of those dynamics, but I'll just say, we agree, and we want everyone to agree on the methodologies, and just like peer reviews for traffic, for civil, for water and sewer, I think it's been a very healthy process to have 2 perspectives and compare notes, and just as we've closed out other items, we certainly want to endeavor to do the same in good faith with police and fire.
If I can just add one more thing, Phil, and I don't want to continue.
Go right ahead.
So in that, some of those emails going back and forth, there was some comments made that I didn't care for, and I did some data digging. So really quick numbers for last year. So we broke down our EMS runs. We did 2,588 medical emergencies in the town. All right. We did a total of 3,676 responses total in the community. Okay. We did a little over 1,000, what we call fire runs, whether it be engine calls, firearms, whatever happens to be. But out of that 2,588 medical calls, we did 1,658 transports for the age bracket of 50 to 70 plus years of age. I say it again, 1,658 transports for the age bracket between 50 and 70. For 70 plus year age residents, we did 873 transports. No one's telling me in this room that we're only gonna have 400 medical calls a year out of this development. I'm sorry. It's just not adding up in my mind. We're gonna be adding at least another 700, if not more, to that.
Sorry, I'll just say again, I think the plan was between police and fire and Rob and our team was to have kind of a detailed working session on this. So certainly I'm sure all of the information you're referencing right now is accurate and true, and that's information that can be helpful to us. We're just, I think similar to, as you don't necessarily want to respond on the spot, I think, we want to get it right. And so I know that the teams are working to set up a working session so we can go through all of that in detail.
Okay.
Rob?
Yeah, just to add, because I know. So in your packets, there were 2 pieces of information. There was the initial letter from, I think it was Mark Fougere, is your impact guy.
Yes.
So that's the planner who is working for the applicant to get really an impact statement together, which that's the initial, I guess, discussion. But as the applicant has mentioned, this is in the works. Like, there's more work to be done. I wanted to make sure you had some information in case there was any discussions related to impacts tonight. Obviously Mark's not here, but just.
There was a lot of information there, though, even in the email exchanges that were happening on the 13th and 14th. I found it very interesting that, the police department, all fire calls you know, the police department showing up for the fire calls too. So, I mean, obviously the methodology of the numbers seems like there's a big miss, and I'm looking for the methodologies to be on both sides to be acceptable. So we need to know the impacts of what's happening. And I see
No,
would you like to respond to
Can I
that?
try to say something?
Please do.
So, I think that's why we need to have the meeting of the minds that Andrew was speaking about, because I think, our initial memos were presented as drafts and preliminary, and then, as we were saying, no one knows public safety in Bellingham better than the gentleman over here, so to have their, context of they respond to all the fire calls is really important for us to understand, because we don't live that day to day, so I think that's why the subsequent coordination session will be.
Yeah, have you had a chance to look at those numbers? I mean, that was like the 13th and 14th of January, so I mean, we're talking, it's been a month since. Have you respun those numbers just to include?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think we're here to litigate data tonight.
No, but the data is the key thing, is there's such a.
Understood, but we're not presenting that data tonight.
Okay.
And I just say again, I think an important context, Mr. Chair, and I think we've been very patient to date and have been
Mhm.
incredibly responsive to everything you guys have requested. The context of all of these discussions is how do we work together to address the concerns? But to imply that it's our idea to build 55 plus housing on this property, the town voted and authorized over 2,000 units on this property. So we don't appreciate, you guys pointing the finger at us for creating this. The
So
town
public
created.
safety is number one, no matter what. So
We
whether
agree, as I
it's
said that a minute
55 or
ago.
not,
I said that a minute ago,
We'll go with that.
but the purview of this board is to work through that, not to, on a binary basis, decide whether something can go forward or not. And I think, there's been a ton of progress made, and it seems every time we answer 100 out of 100 things for this board, the next 100 come. And so, I think we've worked in very good faith, and frankly, there's been zero reciprocity from the board and the town. And, we sit here and you guys laugh and point at us. And I'm here to say personally, we care nothing more than about public safety and police and fire. And that's what we care most about. But to continue to take these conversations and mischaracterize them in terms of what the purpose of these hearings are is starting to be very, very frustrating. And it feels very, very unfair. And it doesn't seem in good faith.
Noted for the record.
Thank you.
And a quick reply, those emails of the 13th and 14th. This report was dated on the 21st. Was this gentleman, excuse me, let me finish. These letters by your person to the two chiefs was dated the 21st. Did they take in consideration any of the email exchanges on the 13th and 14th?
Honestly, I think as Rob can attest, we did not submit these for the record to this board for this hearing. I'm not familiar with all the emails, and whoever was forwarding them around to each other, the stated purpose was what the content of those documents is set to be discussed in the next week or two in a direct working session. We have not submitted those to the board for review this evening. So I'm not sure why that's becoming, the red herring here.
Okay. So I'll ask
I mean, Rob,
another
my-
couple questions
Well,
that the chief is gonna be concerned with, and this has to do with what was presented tonight. So we'll just ask that. Can you go up to slide 9? Paul?
yeah, can I just respond, because you've just kind of dragged me into this? Those memos, they were submitted to me. We discussed public safety was gonna happen tonight. Not knowing if Mark Fougier was going to present any information, that is what we had on the record. The applicant has stated that this wasn't for the record fine. I think that is submitted, you have it, but it's a working document. So I would probably just, maybe we can hold the comments on that. If the applicant is saying that there's going to be forthcoming information after a working session, that is what you're saying, correct?
That is accurate.
So,
Not intended to be on the agenda this evening.
fair. Okay, so that's all I will say with that. What is the slide you'd like, Marty?
Slide 9. 9 or 10.
This one? Or,
That one, and then I think it's the one before also.
that one?
One more, so it might be 7 and 9. Nope, all right, go to 9. That'll answer my question, though, that I can ask. So the third egress off of the current entrance, which is going to be an emergency egress only, it goes down into this portion here. On the site plans, those are parking spaces. So if a car is there, obviously those parking spots need to go away. Well, first and foremost, and what type of gating system are you gonna have to for fire and safety? And the association I live in right now, we have fire gates. So that's an important factor. So we have to make sure that that's spelled out, and how are we handling the secondary current to get the fire truck, the ladder truck in there currently, the width of that's gonna be a massive turn. And how are we handling starting construction at the bottom of Payne Street, yet the golf course is still in action? How is the phasing, and how are you going to handle that as its entrance to the country club, yet you're then having to develop it as a egress to the property you're building?
There's a few questions in there, so
Yes.
I'll start by just indicating that the plan subsequent to this, which is the initial layout that Bowler had done for that third connection. Right, so actually it was the prior, just after this one, if you get it, Dana.
That one.
That one. You are absolutely correct. There are 3 parking spaces that are impacted by that connection at the end there that would be eliminated. So you correctly point that out. The grade of this, the construction of this would really convert what is today a cart path of sorts into a 20-foot wide fire access road, right? It would be structurally supported, H20 loading, all of that. The grades on this are relatively flat. They're certainly less than 5. It says 4.5%. So it's a pretty good connection. And it also provides a direct connection into the aisle next to the building, right? So there's no need to have to turn weirdly at the connection point where that fire access road to that parking field. It literally goes right through. So let's talk about what leads up to this. The idea would be to have this gated. We wouldn't want to have it used as general vehicular travel. So the developer would defer to what the fire department would prefer for gate control. It could be a Knox box, it could be an optically programmed arm, it could be a lot of different things. And
Well, what's the road made out of?
it's gonna
Is it
be,
paved or is it?
it's gonna be
It's
paved.
gonna be paved?
Yeah. With all suitable sub-base materials for H20 loading. So 20 feet wide, it's gonna completely, meet all of the applicable standards for fire access roads. But, the gate control on this is subject to whatever the fire department is comfortable with. The existing driveway at NECC will be gated as well. And same issue, developer would work with the fire department to determine whether or not an optically programmed gate is preferred, or whether a Knox box type gate is preferred in some of the, machinations of that. So, the concept here is emergency access is available by means of 2 driveways along Payne Street, one of which will be gated. And once you're on the site, from either driveway location, you have the ability to access each one of the 3 connecting fire access roads that go to the west buildings, to the central core of the site, and to the easterly buildings, the 3 that we mentioned. Right, in terms of the construction and the phasing, I I don't think we've really gotten to a point where we've fully
Right.
identified that. That would be subject to a construction management plan.
And then one last one, Chief brought it up about the block to box and that there's issues down there. The only thing I can see to mitigate that would either be a light there or, and Chief Miller, you can, Chief Fitzgerald, you might be able to answer this. Is there any means of adding, photo enforcement of block to
Not
box?
Massachusetts, it's not legal.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if it had I know there had been talks about getting it through. I didn't know if it had happened. So, thank you.
Can I ask through the chair a question to the fire?
Mhm.
Is there any connection whatsoever between Station One and the Pulaski signal in terms of preemption?
Not till you get out of the station. So in other words, you gotta get out onto Payne Street,
Yeah.
Rentham Road,
Right,
and then it will activate it. But
Okay.
coming out of the station, there's no line of sight that'll trip a light.
would it be beneficial to have a radio control connection to the Opticom that could be activated within the station so that Payne Street clears entirely while you're getting your vehicle out of the station?
Hopkinton has it, they just put it in downtown and it's not working very well.
No.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, because mental mindset at 3 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock when you're trying to get out the door, more 5 o'clock when the traffic is there, she's not gonna go push the button to have that signal trip.
Mhm.
It's better just to use, we have Opticoms on all the apparatus, we rely on the Opticoms and the sensors on the traffic lights. And there are sensors on that intersection,
Right.
but we've gotta get up to that intersection.
Right.
And what we find, Bob, on a regular basis is getting out of that, getting that ambulance and that school pickup truck out for a medical emergency,
Mhm.
or even the engine coming out the backside, because it comes out on the Rentham roadside,
Right.
up down a little bit further.
Right.
By Muron, it's very difficult to get through that intersection to get, either take the right to go up in the Pulaski Boulevard,
Mhm.
or to take the left to go up the Payne to where Robin up in that area, or even up mutually into Woonsocket.
Right, right. Yeah, the only reason I raised that question is
Mhm.
that we're designing a system in Plymouth right now that does that.
Yeah.
And it's literally right at the door of the station, so as you're getting your equipment on, it's literally.
I have to err on the side of caution and only to say because more times than not, you're not gonna think of it to hit the button. It's
Yeah.
easy when you start the truck up and you hit the emergency warning light, the Opticom comes on automatically and it trips the lights once you get into line of sight with it.
Why do you need it?
Nope.
Someone.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. I don't want to, irritate the applicant. I want to make sure I do what's correct for the town. My comments tonight, are they on your presentation this evening?
Yeah, it really is, this is a recap of information that we've presented to the board,
Okay,
being represented really for the benefit of police fire.
okay,
So all of this information is on the record. It's been filed.
Yep.
I don't know to what extent it's been disseminated or reviewed by police fire. So this is the forum, in my understanding that we're just gonna recap everything. So they're hearing it firsthand.
okay.
Yeah.
So is it fair to say, possibility exists, we're talking apples and oranges, the way we look at some things. Is that a fair assessment with regards to numbers? You want to come to a meeting of the minds on
On what numbers, sorry?
all the numbers that were presented this evening?
On the slides.
Yes.
Yes, I think
And
those have
crash
been
data.
deemed closed out.
Yeah,
by
those
the
were
peer
all,
reviewer.
those were all subject to the peer review
Yeah, that was
process.
the traffic impact
Okay.
analysis.
But I heard numbers tonight I've not heard before.
Yeah, there was this apparently draft letter. It was a response to some of the comments that were made by police and fire, which
Okay,
need to be worked out. So,
okay, and I appreciate that.
yeah, in an effort to keep things moving, I would was to ask that we can look at those again once there's discussions between police and fire, the applicant, and
Okay.
Mark.
Rob.
Boucher.
Can I ask a question here? Does the board need to hear from the police department on all about traffic, or has traffic been resolved satisfactorily to everyone's satisfaction here?
So the traffic peer review has been addressed, but you're more than welcome to.
No, I'd say. There were concerns.
Sure.
Why I'm here. We're talking about traffic, but our input hasn't been solicited beyond some notes in an email, so,
Yeah,
and new information's been brought up tonight, so. But that's fine.
Okay, then that eliminates, for the sake of, making this meeting this evening purposeful. That eliminates a lot of my questions, except for, one comment you made. And I heard a comment, in the back of the room. I also heard a comment from the chief. We all live here. We travel through town every day. I want to say more often than not, that exit in front of the South Fire Station is clogged. I think, you may have videos, but it's seldom when I'm going either direction on Rentham Street or driving down Payne Street, it appears to be clogged. The only times it's not clogged are late at night or perhaps early in the morning. And then I do want to delve into more detail at a future meeting to make sure we're all on the same page. Because I have a concern with safety and traffic, and I think we've raised some of those issues. But I think we just want to take a breath right now, I think. And sit back and see where it goes.
Just, Mr. O'Connell, I just respectfully ask, I think in terms of all of the empirical analysis and the sessions on sessions and hearings on traffic, we were told as of last meeting were resolved and closed out. I understand the anecdotal information you're referencing in terms of daily experience, but I'm just, this again is where we come to this. We answered all of the town's questions. We made major changes.
I understand.
And so I'm just trying to understand, are you suggesting that, no matter what we do, nothing should be built here?
No, I'm not saying that. And please don't put words in my mouth.
I'm just asking.
Well, no. And you cited documentation that in a public that refer to the fact that our minds are made up. That couldn't be further from the truth. Okay?
It just seems like everything that was talked about the last 4 hearings is being dismissed.
I'm not saying that, sir.
Sir, we held.
I simply want to say one thing. This gentleman over here, the police department, I don't know what he thought he was coming here for tonight, but safety and traffic go hand in hand.
We completely agree. And
Okay.
again, I want to reiterate, we are wholeheartedly committed to work with both chiefs. And again, we're hoping that meeting is set up next week.
I certainly appreciate
And
it.
the first folks we met with Dennis Frayne in this building 2.5 years ago was the fire chief,
Okay,
before we even met a town planner.
okay,
So that I think that's indicative of that was where we felt we should start and where our journey started 2.5 years ago.
and
So I just,
appreciate that.
and if the journey continues here and it's not, the journey's not complete yet, but it is important to me that everybody is aware that fire and police and safety is something that from the genesis of this project, from the top of the first inning, has been a key component, and we have actively solicited feedback.
Okay,
And we're all reasonable folks, and we understand that we're not there yet, and it's not perfect. But I
Okay.
think we're asking, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
okay,
Yeah, and I'll just say that, we didn't expect some, big rollout, discussion from police or fire that, hasn't been broached in some form leading up to this point. So, we appreciate the police department being here. One of the first meetings I had on this project was with police and fire. The police department, was very concerned with, a lot of aspects of Payne Street. And we therefore endeavored to understand what the actual numbers are showing, and the
Mhm.
police has been really great in working with us to provide all of the crash records that allowed us to understand where and why crashes were occurring on Payne Street. We've gone and at request of police, and done very detailed speed studies on Payne Street. We've identified a series of recommended improvements at the top of the hill, which is where the crashes are occurring. We have been asked by the police department to see if we could add a right turn lane
into the property. We've done that. We've, in the very beginning conversations, we're asked,
Yeah.
kind of signal go here. Yes, it can. It's been designed preliminarily. It's been subject to peer review. So we very much appreciate all of the input from police and fire. They've been very, very helpful in getting us to this point. So I didn't expect that police were going to show up and say, we've got a litany of 20 more things that we need to talk about. We've listened carefully. We've responded to those. They're now baked into the plan that I just recapped.
Okay.
So, yeah, so and if there's any additional input that they have, we're more than glad to hear it. You know, it's still an open conversation, but I think we've made we've done quite a bit of work to address it.
I certainly don't disagree.
So before going to, before going to Stephen. Chief Fitzgerald, you have public safety issues that you need to hear as far as feedback.
Well, obviously, we're
From your
only talking traffic tonight, right? Where this other issue, and in terms of a meeting, I will be very candid that I told their consultant, I'm not willing to meet until you provide me with statistically correct data and data summaries, data points. It would be like me coming to a budget hearing trying to compare Bellingham to Millville and saying, this is what I need because this, or them compare. So that's what I was getting for comparison. The data set was totally wrong. It's not usable. That's with their public safety consultant, not their traffic consultant. But you did hear tonight from the traffic consultant, he reviewed crash records of a straight road with no signalized intersection in the area of the golf course. So again, I can show you crash records from Interstate 495 and a straight road. They're all single vehicle cars going off the road. You introduce traffic lights in an intersection, and now you introduce a different type of accident. So the number of accidents on Payne Street is relatively low. Speeds are relatively high. So it's, new data comes out tonight and we hear anecdotally, oh, the crash records, there's very low volume of crashes there because it's a straight road with no red light. I can show you in our 510 crashes that we went to last year, somewhere around 70% of them occurred in an intersection. That's where they occur. That's where people do inappropriate things, run red lights, follow too closely, don't use a turn signal, fail to grant right away oncoming traffic, all that. So, that's of concern to me. We heard the sight lines are adequate and redone. And it's, I haven't seen this newest revision here, but we know the 85th percentile northbound on Payne Street buried in one of the, surveys was 50 miles an hour, 49 or 50. So at that speed with perception reaction time, you're talking a minimum of 200 plus feet for a vehicle to slide to a stop. If presented with a problem in the roadway in front of it, that's implying in that 200 feet, there's nothing else for it to make contact with. So traffic may be closed between peer reviewers. Traffic was never closed with the police department. So I solicited some comments and we've been patiently waiting for public safety night to come address our comments. So that's, those are my concerns. And I'll throw in from the police department's perspective, a gated entry is not an entry to us. Fire uses different systems. They're used to Knox boxes. Police officers are not. They're going to encounter a lock gate. They're going to go around. So if the go around means there's a problem with the main access road, I don't know what that looks like. But we don't carry endless keys to every different type of gate and padlock in town and forestry gates and fire gates, and that's fire. So it's truly not a public safety second egress. It's a fire specific second point of egress. So I just point that out. This is going to be a big place with a lot of impact. But from a traffic perspective,
So
my concerns lie squarely on Payne Street at this point.
So you bring up the access, and we heard the fire chief mention that. Would you have a different perspective on that access that you'd want to comment on tonight, or would you like to review more of the data maybe with Rob as far as, right now, I think the proposal is the access that they've got is the existing one is a backup, which will be gated in one scenario. They're putting in the new light that they showed as the secondary one. with another access road going into the section. But to your point, there's one non-gated entrance to that site. And I guess I wouldn't want to put you on the spot, but at some point we'd like to probably, does that do it for you, sir, for public safety?
It's tough because I don't know what it's a conceptual intersection, right?
Yeah.
If there's a car accident at the intersection out front here.
Yep.
Can anyone get into the municipal here? No. Right, so now put Payne Street, if there's a car accident there, how much of the complex, especially if it's on this side, how much of somebody's taking a left in, they get hit by somebody coming straight, they've blocked the road there. You know, what accessibility issue does that cause? I don't know, it's conceptual, right? If the intersection's big enough and wide enough, even if there's an accident, somebody can get around, but you're talking a big development and you're talking, you know, with their public safety consultants is 1,400 people. I say 1,600 people. Who knows? It's going to be at least 800 people, right? Potentially, and up to however many people can squeeze in. So it's going to be a place that drives call volume that we will need to get to. But that intersection is going to be a place where we deal with car accidents. There's just no way around it. Every signalized intersection in this town, if you put a heat map where car accidents occur, that's where they occur at all the signalized intersections and the stop sign, the non-signalized control intersections, because that's where vehicles have interactions and drivers have interactions, and somebody doesn't do something right and a crash happens. So, you know, I don't love the one egress. You know, I think the neighbors didn't love Rentham Road. I understand why. It's, you know, a quiet, more residential rural road, but we looked at that and said, hey, that would really ease the pressure off of Payne Street. Rentham Road's a lot less dangerous because it doesn't have that downhill. So,
Sight lines, wider.
Yeah. so it's that's where we came up with, and I think the fire chiefs, a lot of the drive for our Rentham Road access point was driven by both of us. They have their reasons, we have our reasons, and that would give two true entrances. Something a few hundred feet up the street with a gate, that's not an entrance, that's checking a box. So, but it's not checking a box for the police department, it's checking a box for fire.
Okay. Stephen, you're up next.
Two comments as it relates to public safety, none of which are for traffic. My first one is just to reiterate that, and I think we all agree that when we assess the ability from being able to cover this from a police and fire perspective, well, I should say fire first, that we should never use other towns as a gauge as to whether or not we can cover, cover calls. It should be based on what the town is able to cover. But my question is this: when Chief Fitzgerald and Chief Miller, and you're able to, I would be interested in hearing that if something like this goes through with the population increase, how it's going to affect services that currently stand with your staffing levels. You need to hire more people, you need to get more equipment, and I understand you don't know that now.
Right.
But I think that's important when you have the ability to answer that. And that's all I have.
Patrick, do you have any?
I have no questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Rob?
Maybe transition, I know Jesse's on the call, maybe you can just give a quick update on the utility info.
Can I ask one, let me ask a procedural question. Did the peer review look at what additional traffic, what additional accidents would happen because there's gonna be a new light as the entrance? I don't remember seeing that. Do you remember seeing that?
No, it's not in the engineering realm. I understand what the chief is saying. There's really not a good way to predict crashes at a location like that. That's why other standards exist, which is sight lines, the operational analysis, understanding what the extent of the vehicle queuing, making sure the lane widths are appropriate, separate turn lanes. There's all of that has gone into the design and the consideration, and in engineering speak, we have to meet certain criteria.
Okay.
They're all safety related criteria.
But
to-
are you acknowledging the fact that there's gonna be more accidents there with the new light than there is today? I'm hearing that and our public safety is saying there is, and I'm assuming you're gonna acknowledge.
Well,
that that's
yeah,
the case.
there's a couple points. First of all, the signal is not gonna be placed in day one. It has to be warranted first.
Okay,
Right, and that's a point that the peer reviewer correctly pointed out. And, yeah, we expect that the signal will only meet those warrants somewhere around 300 residential units. Right, so from day one to roughly, say, 300 units, that will be an unsignalized location, just like Elbow Street is and any of the other side streets. will
but
be.
when you build what is proposed here, that's what I wanna look at. Is, if you get 850.
At full build up.
At full build out.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's gonna be more accidents there. Is that, and I'm asking you the question that he just stated, because I think he's public safety here, and I'm assuming I was gonna have peer review look at it, is what my suggestion was gonna be.
Sure, you can ask them that question. What I would say is that when you introduce a signalized intersection, if crashes do occur, there would most likely be, say, for instance, rear end collisions and things of that nature, and things that you see at Pulaski.
So.
But
you're
the
agreeing-
difference is,
agreeing.
that, we're talking about a driveway, a side street that has a much lower volume condition than, say, Pulaski, which has hundreds and hundreds of cars every hour from every direction. So the signal here is gonna function differently than it does at Pulaski. Most of the time, that light's gonna be green on Payne Street. In the occasion when someone approaches it from the driveway side, it'll be actuated so that it then produces just enough green time to clear that driveway. But literally 80 to 90% of the time, that's gonna be a green ball on Payne Street. So the purpose of the signal is really to create manufactured gaps from time to time based on the lower volumes that are coming out of the driveway. And the volumes that are coming out of the driveway are nothing like any, Pulaski Boulevard. So it's hard to predict, with any certainty if there's gonna be an increase in crashes or the type of crashes. Could they occur? Yes, absolutely. That could occur anywhere along Payne Street. And the chief correctly points out, that the data we have for Payne Street are what exists now, right? I understand that. We also know there are plenty of other side streets and driveways along that corridor that have not experienced crashes. We're gonna be one of a whole host of driveways or intersections along Payne Street that operate like they do today, and the crashes that we flagged aren't on a straight section of road, they're on a curved section of road. And that's one of the causal factors to that, driving late at night around a corner, a curve, with poor visibility, that's where you get those single crash statistics. So, the design meets the applicable standards. In fact, it exceeds them by a factor of 2. It's been subject to peer review. There are very specific criteria that apply to this. When the signal can go in based on warrants, there's a lot of factors here. And, I'm comfortable saying at a professional level that driveway location is at a location that can be designed and controlled and operated in a safe manner. It doesn't mean that crashes won't happen, because they do, right? But we're not creating a circumstance with that driveway that's gonna somehow create Armageddon on Payne Street. That's just simply not the case. Had it been, the peer reviewer would have called that out. And I've been doing this for 37 years. I've not yet worked on a project that didn't make things better at the end of the day relative to where we started, and that speaks to the signal improvement at Pulaski Boulevard and trying to make that work better, designing the driveway to exceed safety standards, providing dual means of access into the property in accordance with NFPA 1 and Massachusetts Fire Code, making sure the grades are compliant with local standards. All of that is now baked into this plan, and we're not dismissing anything that the responding officials are saying here. There's a vested interest by this developer to make sure it's as safe as it possibly can be. Who'd want to live in a place that isn't, right?
Well, that's why our public safety officials are there.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Before, one last comment from me before we go to Jesse. The presentation again that you showed shows from the top of the hill, a sight line that cuts through all these trees that you said are in the public way. And I did ask the last time for you guys to provide, and I'm looking forward to seeing that, what you're saying the public way is.
It's on the plan, so, yeah.
Again, in another meeting, I would like to go through that in detail. Okay. I think that's fair.
Yep.
All right, any other things that the chiefs would like to bring up today? Because we look forward to your input once we've got.
Is there, what if anything is on the table for sidewalk improvements here? Because we also heard about pedestrian access, but the sidewalks along Payne Street are obviously probably not, Jesse could probably answer this, are probably not up to current code or compliance. So it is, we're talking about signal, and it obviously seems like there's gonna be some sort of crosswalk situation, but it's gonna lead to, are we talking new crosswalks up and down Payne Street? Are we talking new sidewalks? Are we talking, I don't know where that lands with in terms of traffic, what's being proposed or offered or required.
Do you have the picture?
It's from last,
Yeah.
Last time.
Which I don't know if I have that.
It was on here, it was like slide 14.
Yeah, so not the sidewalks, at the intersection, yes, one of the drawings did show that. The larger context of the sidewalks was last hearing, so I can explain it through the chair, just briefly. So there'll be 500 linear feet of brand new sidewalk near that new intersection driveway. Pulaski Boulevard working south, there's new sidewalk there as well. And there's a gap of about 600 feet of sidewalk that is most likely substandard in some way, might not be wide enough. For instance, there might be a telephone pole in the middle of it. And what we've indicated to the board is that the developer would make, the structure of it would be a financial contribution to the town for purposes of designing and implementing an improved sidewalk in that section. The issue is that, and this speaks to the right of way, right, along the road, there are portions of the sidewalk that, although they like to be wider than they are today, may actually encroach on private property. And that type of a widening or improvement is beyond the ability of a private interest to do. Right? It has to be a municipal project. The municipality has certain rights to be able to make improvements, even if it affects private property. So that is the structure and the nature of the conversation. Everyone wants to have nice sidewalks out here. What the developer can do is what's shown in this color plan, which is the 500 linear feet of brand new sidewalk and the new crossing. And the crossing will be signal controlled. So push button activated. Someone needs to cross, they push the button if they want. It's that gap that to address it would really need to be.
May I for just a second?
Go ahead.
In your last slide deck, there was one concept that I thought it did a really good job of showing new and proposed.
Yeah.
Can you just send that one thing to me?
Sure, yeah.
Not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find it.
Yeah.
To the sidewalk conversation, the first meeting we had at the high school, I brought up Rentham Manor. And when we've been progressing through the conversations with, looking for public safety input on the back entrance there, taking that back entrance out of there does play into Rentham Manor and the traffic walking past the fire station up into that intersection. That will probably end up being conversations later after you've got time after you guys input, because that came up in the first time we met with the applicant. So I think we should probably go to Jesse unless there's any other concerns from the board. Okay.
Does the Chiefs have any other comments?
Chiefs.
I'm also thinking.
All right, Jesse. Floor is yours.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's time tonight. Want to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the impacts that we anticipate with the development or the project of this size, this magnitude. Kicking off with water, we did consult with our team over at Beta to update our existing water model to determine available fire flows and system pressures. We use a standard of 110 gallons per day per bedroom, looking about 132,000 gallons per day is what our estimate is. Translation, that's about 92 gallons per minute. With this, we looked at a couple different scenarios, the first of which being a single entrance for the water supply. And scenario 2 was a looped water system, both of them requiring upsizing of the existing 6-inch cast iron water main along Payne Street to a minimum of 8-inch. All of these flows that were considered were based on the existing 103 psi that's currently available. Our comments on this was the preference to upsize the water main along Payne Street, additional to a 10-inch to provide future capacity in the event it's necessary. Obviously, a development or a project of this size, we need to make sure we can provide adequate pressure, capacity, and fire flows. Also, drinking water supply. Not only does it have impacts on the immediate complex, it also pulls water that would otherwise be allocated for the rest of Bellingham system. So as we prepare for these, we have to think of it holistically, what the impacts are outside of this location and planning accordingly. So with that, scenario 2, the looped water main system for water qualities for redundancy was the preferred method for the DPW. It's certainly something that we are instituting throughout our system, again, with those two benefits in mind.
Okay, have you discussed that with the applicant already?
Yes, this memo that our consultant had drafted up was provided to the applicant.
Okay, has the applicant had time to review those items?
Yes.
And are they incorporated into the plans
Um,
or agreed to be implemented?
I think I was, the preference for a 10-inch water main was news maybe, so I think we would have to kind of go back and understand what that means.
So let me ask you this. So Jesse, you said that a larger water main is needed. So where would this start? Well, from what location and, how much are we talking about as far as distance and, because I'm clueless about this.
Yep, great question. So the upsized water main would begin at Pulaski Boulevard. This is where our larger diameter mains are currently in existence. So we would pick up at this intersection, carry it on down Payne Street to the entrance of the development.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Include a loop system, Jesse? Is that a loop you mentioned a loop system. Has that been incorporated?
Yeah, so with the loop system, we would look to pick up redundancy. Our system continues up Payne Street and it continues over. We actually have a cross-country main that connects to another portion of our system. So Payne Street, in essence, is not a dead end as it stands, if that makes sense.
Okay, so this would not be, the plans that you've seen would handle the situation as far as not being a loop system, would be a loop system in your.
Right. And actually, I'm just pulling back the drawing that was provided as well. The loop system would carry through, if feasible by the applicant, it would tie back into Rentham Road. So in essence, it would come down Payne Street, cut through where this development is, and then loop back to Rentham Road.
Is Rentham Road an 8-inch main out there?
From this location in Rentham Road, the main line actually varies, but by doing the loop system, it does provide that redundancy and it increases the fire flows significantly within the development. Of the two models with that loop system, we jump from let's see, just north of 2,400 gallons per minute to about 3,700 gallons a minute in that same location. So it's because of the locations that it's pulling from, in two different directions that it would allow for additional flows within.
Mr. Chair, may I just ask one?
Go ahead.
Jesse, thank you very much to you and your team for all of your time, over the past year and a half. We really appreciate it. And I'll defer to some of the technical dimensional specifics. Just I know Mark and your team can follow up just on some of those items to make sure we understand them. But just as more of a general matter, I know that over the course of different hearings, there had been concerns raised about capacity as a general matter. And I do not want to characterize it as a civilian, and so correct me if I'm wrong, but is it fair to say that, yes, maybe technical dimensional elements, remain under discussion, but that capacity as a general matter has been, confirmed that there is sufficient capacity?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
These are sprinkler buildings, right?
Yes.
Jesse, I'm assuming the water analysis you did would include a sprinkler system?
Yes, that is correct. We did draft a memo as well. Did send this over to Mr. Lucier with the sprinkler system. Any necessary backflow devices, annual testing, things of that nature would be outlined as well.
Okay. Have you had a chance at the sewer system?
Yes. Yep.
Capacity, can you discuss sewer system tonight?
Absolutely. So with the sewer system, we consulted with our sewer consultants at Kleinfelder. With this design, we are looking at a private pump station that would pump to an existing Bellingham facility on Benelli Street. Some of the concerns that we have with this are the vintage of the station itself. It was installed in the mid-90s era. So we're looking at a station that's, north of 30 years of age. It is one of Bellingham's largest sewer pumping stations that does feed into Woonsocket. There's nearly 4,000 feet of force main, followed by an additional 3,700 feet of gravity that all runs through Woonsocket. So just items for consideration. Part of the analysis was to evaluate the sewer pumping station, but it did not include the additional piping that runs into Woonsocket that Bellingham is responsible for. So just so everybody understands, that was not part of this analysis due to funding as well as timeline constraints. So part of our recommendations were, as far as the existing gravity, to do inspections to confirm the condition. The pump station capacity, it is recommended to increase the existing station from the current rating of 800 from what we're observing to a larger pump to add additional capacity for future growth. It's about 400 above the existing. And for consideration on that, the larger pumps would have additional electrical strain. Again, as I mentioned, the pump station itself is aging. It's beyond the 20-year life expectancy for a station of this size, this standard. So we'd be looking to potentially decommission and upgrade to the town's newer standard and to consider inspecting the downstream force main and gravity mains that run through Woonsocket. Additional inspections include the manhole structures along this into Woonsocket, again, inspecting the current condition and the potential need for any repairs or things of that nature. And while being inspected, consideration for the existing main and potentially upsizing if necessary to accommodate any additional flow that the town might anticipate.
Is Kleinfeld giving you a document of what it would take to do that? Or the costs of the upgrades and the cost of the extra piping and the manhole covers and all that stuff? Have they given you a firm document with documentation as far as dollar amounts and stuff?
Yes, so Kleinfelder has supplied us with an opinion of probable costs for construction. As it stands, this does not include the force main downstream of the pumping station, nor the gravity. So up to and including that sewer pumping station, their figures with contingency, we're looking just north of $1 million based on their estimates.
Okay, Rob, do you have a copy of that?
Yeah, that's in the, that's, you guys have that, that's from the initial, report, I think, which was what, back in December, I think, or November?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay, the things that aren't included. Is there a plan to solidify those a little bit more? You mentioned two things that weren't included in the analysis that Kleinfeld gave you. I think it would.
Correct. So the force main and the gravity, as well as the structures that are along the route, would be something that should be considered as we progress. We have not had recent conversations on that, but every conversation up to this point with the applicant has been, what needs to be explored to make this happen. So those conversations could continue and potentially an agreement to consider the next steps.
Rob, where would you like to go from here? Would you like to, or does the board have any particular questions that they'd like to pose?
The
only one I had was the on-site private pump station. Jesse, do you inspect those and at what regularity?
So as far as a private pump station, we do have some of these in Bellingham. Typically, the arrangement with a private pump station is they remain private. They're inspected. Any maintenance, routine visits would be handled by the owners of the station.
Let me ask the question. So the first set of drawings we had, the first meeting we had, I commented on the drawing, I probably got here somewhere. It was commented pump station designed by others. Is this the pump station we're talking about at the bottom of Payne Street? Or is that the private one?
That would be the private one.
This is the private one that's designed by others. So this is the one that is on Payne, basically on Payne Street, close to Payne Street.
Close to Payne Street, but on our property.
But on your property, and it would be the facility. It's at the bottom of a hill and you're pumping it to Woonsocket, up to Woonsocket. Okay. Up the hill to, go ahead.
Just for clarity, so there's two pump stations. There's a private one on site.
Okay.
That's the one that's at the entrance of the development on Payne Street. And the design by others note, that's a common note because it's showing it, Bowler Engineering is showing it on their civil engineering plans. But they're gonna have a mechanical engineer and somebody that actually designs the station to do it, to take care of that. So,
But it's gonna be a private one in the future, so.
and then that will pump to the Benelli pump station, which then pumps to, I think it discharges south of Diamond Hill Road, right, Jesse?
That is correct.
And it goes to Gravity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Does any of the board have questions that they'd like to address? Okay.
Yeah, we're getting close to 9 o'clock and have a couple business items too that are gonna take a little bit of time.
Any other place
So,
you'd like to go tonight on with this applicant?
no, I think, if the public has any questions, comments or concerns, maybe just open it up and then, we
Okay.
can talk about continuing to, probably March. That makes sense.
I may just have a procedural question beforehand.
Sure.
Okay. Before I open it up to the audience, you did hear tonight, the chiefs will be looking at this in more detail, including the South Fire Station, total situation there. And the chief is shaking his head, yes, that they're gonna be looking at that, but If there are additional questions that have not been asked, I'll phrase it that way. I'd like to open it up to the crowd. If you could stand up, raise your hand, ask a question.
I do have questions.
Mrs. Pino.
Lots of them. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm really concerned about what's going on. So Linda Pino, 8 Reedville Circle. With regard to the design on Payne Street, at one point I thought there were going to be a bike lane or a bike path. I did not see it in the drawings. Has that been eliminated?
On Payne Street?
I don't
Yeah.
recall there ever being
I don't
discussion.
remember
about-
it's
No.
bike path
Yeah.
on the
Read
street.
somewhere that there was some consideration of having a bike lane or something.
I know.
Because I know there are bicycle people who go up and go down.
I know that there, in numerous other hearings in town, there's been discussions of bike paths that might have translated to maybe
Okay.
different hearings,
So
but
we're
yeah,
not gonna
that's
have-
not a.
But I don't think it's been suggested by the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah,
I-
I'll discuss.
I don't think that's
Okay.
on the table
That's
here.
fine.
That's- well,
It's just that I
So
didn't
they'll
see it
correct
in
me
the
if I'm wrong.
drawings, so I figured I'd bring it up. Okay, that's fine. With regard to the existing entrance into the complex, the existing driveway into the golf course?
Yes,
Okay, you're looking at having that as an emergency access only
correct.
with a gate or whatever. So my concern is that that's not far from the top of that hill. And it's a sharp corner. If you're going down from Woonsocket,
Mhm.
you've got that sharp turn. So what my concern is that if you've got a locked gate into that driveway, is it going to be far enough in so that there's not going to be a fire truck or a ladder truck that's stuck in the middle of the road? Now you've got traffic coming down at 45 miles an hour from Woonsocket, not knowing that there's a truck there.
Knowing
And then-
knowing your question, I
I can-
think I can answer that one quickly.
So go into that current entrance and egress way
Yeah.
into the golf course.
Yeah.
As you drive in I don't even know what the name of it, it was Egan's Pub, I don't know if it's still Egan's Pub, but Egan's Pub sits up on the
Yeah, you get
hill.
above, yeah.
So it's a ways in, we're looking for almost right across from Egan's Pub, you have the big bank in the hill that goes out, it would be well off of Payne Street, we would
Okay.
be on the country club property for a
Okay,
couple hundred feet,
okay, all right,
or we would definitely not be on Payne
all
Street.
right. I'm just trying to
Yep,
look
no,
for.
that's a good
no-
question,
More accidents happening at that.
very
corner.
fair.
Also at that corner, there is a side street that I know when you're coming up Payne Street and you're going around that corner, if there's a car coming out of that side street, and I don't know what the name of that street is.
Is it Pinecrest?
I don't know if it's Pinecrest or not, but there's one right
Sure.
there at the top of the hill on the right side if you're going up. I know I've been in that area and I've tried to come out. And I know that I've come up Payne Street and I see people trying, residents in that area, in that neighborhood, also trying to come out of that street. And with the traffic going both ways, it's almost like emerging, you're taking your life into your hands. So, now what I'm wondering is if you're looking at possibly adding some lighting systems or whatever on that curve, is it going to make any improvement on the way that those people are able to get out of that area? I just thought I'd throw that out. The other thing too is, at the intersection where the existing firehouse is, we've been talking about, all the discussion's been based on the current station. If there's a possibility of another station or being built in that area, does that mean that the configuration where the triangle is, that sits right in front of the station, is that whole intersection going to be remodeled, revised? Another question to think about. Because that's, as the chief said, and you said, Mr. Devine, is the intersection is atrocious as far as I'm concerned. I know I've been locked in that traffic myself. And the gentleman who mentioned that the people coming down Payne Street, leave an opening
No,
at that intersection,
doesn't.
they don't. We've got people who actually try and nose out. And they can't even get into the traffic that's, either coming through
Okay.
or even trying to get through because of the light coming, from Payne Street is now red, and you've got traffic coming in to go up Payne Street or to take a left onto Rentham Road. There's no movement. It gets locked up. So the people are not as gracious as you think. They will keep you in line at a standstill until the light changes. And only will you get a real nice person who will let you through. So, you have to sit there in order to see the congestion that we're going through at the south end of town. I'm just going through my questions, because I think
No, it's okay. I
you
know you'll be here
may-
next time too.
Oh. The other comment that was made is that when the engine's coming out, or the fire rescue coming out of your station, the synchronization of the light on Pulaski Boulevard intersection,
Mhm.
if there was some sort of an alert that was in the firehouse.
It's a push
okay,
button system,
all right.
yes, yep, and triggers the light.
If the truck, if the call is down Rentham Road,
Mhm.
then there's no reason to have to hit the light
Correct,
or to impact the whatchamacallit, the traffic on
Correct.
Pulaski Boulevard.
Right.
So if that actually gets hit by mistake or whatever the case may be, now you've got a call going down Rentham Road or in that area or down Lake, where you've got the traffic on Pulaski having been impacted. So I think we need to be careful about how that is all reconfigured or how that is timed. Okay,
so I can do really quick, like, so if we're coming out and we're heading down towards the Coachman, towards
Yeah.
that way, so we come out of the station. we
yeah,
take
you're going to
right.
my house.
Correct.
Yeah,
And mine.
We have opticons on the trucks now that work all the time.
Yeah.
If there's no signal light and there's no receiver on the light,
right,
it doesn't make a difference.
right.
It's gotta be line, it's gotta see it and it's gotta read it.
So it's reading off the vehicles.
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Absolutely, great. Then
Yep.
maybe you don't need that button in the firehouse then. Okay. Okay. Some of these are just my own. Okay. The other concern I have is there are a lot of 18-wheeler trucks that come down Payne Street. There are. And once they get the momentum, they're coming down at a decent speed. They're not coming down at 25 miles an hour. The speed triggers, the marquees that you have that monitor the speed of the cars. You've had it on Payne Street a number of times. And I've actually watched some of the people, when I'm driving in back of somebody, I actually see the people gunning it just to see how high they can make the speed go. How high they can make the speed reading go. I purposely go 25 miles an hour just to slow the people in back of me down. Now, if you've got traffic that's coming down Payne Street, and you've got, God forbid, you've got an 18-wheeler or whatever, and somebody comes up to that light that is now turned red, you've either gonna end up with people who could possibly, and everybody's seen it, people who are running red lights, who are now creating a crash. You've got the high-speed guys who all of a sudden, if somebody in front of them is stopping because they just saw the red light, the people behind them are now going to end up with hitting them in the rear. So I'm just, kind of foreseeing in my little crystal ball, all the additional crashes that could happen. So that light concerns me. The other thing that concerns me too is the fact that if there's a serious accident there, what's the traffic tie-up how is that going to be handled? Because you've got the traffic coming out of the project, you've got the traffic coming out of one socket, you got the traffic going into one socket, it's gonna end up being a bottleneck. So at that point, the gentlemen who are in our blue uniforms, they're now gonna end up with this crazy mess that's gonna be on Payne Street and how to handle it, okay? So I'm concerned about that as well.
Okay. We're,
As well as, and the other thing too is, and I know we've talked about it, is the traffic that goes in and out of the complex. You got 800 units, at least 800 cars, if not another 400 for those that might have 2 cars in their family. But you've also got UPS, Amazon, FedEx, Uber, and all the other delivery restaurant drivers that are going in. So there's a tremendous amount of traffic that's gonna end up going up and down and in and out. So I have some concerns about that as well. And the other thing that has to do is the water. So in the summer, we already have issues with the droughts, severe droughts. You can't use the water, you can't use the water. And now you've got another 800 units that are gonna be used, that are gonna use up water for not only drinking, washing dishes, washing clothes, bathroom, breaks. Probably for the, whatchamacallit, for the landscaping. So now, when we have severe droughts, how much more are we gonna be able to handle with the additional stress? And that goes with the people who have been living in this, you know, town for the last 50, 60 years, like myself. So, you know, this is the kind of thing that I'm also looking at as well. So
Thank
those
you.
are my concerns. I just want to get
Thank
them
you
out.
for your input.
But I come to every one of these meetings just for that reason. So as a resident, I just want to make sure that you understand what our concerns are as well, and I appreciate what you're bringing up as well. All right, thank you very much.
You mentioned there was some procedural questions you'd like to pose to the board and Rob.
Yes, just kind of as we're thinking about future meetings, so, and I think, and again, I want to acknowledge, you know, Chief Miller, Chief Fitzgerald, thank you both for your time tonight, and I want to be very clear. You know, I have some general questions which don't apply at all to the police and fire scope. You know, we are fully, that is certainly the priority in the coming weeks, and, you know, so we have my personal word on that, and we want to engage in good faith. And if there's been anything lost in translation with different consultants or anything, you know, we will help rectify that, and we want to convene, you know, a appropriate, fruitful discussion. And so I hope, you know, if you could give us a chance or the trust to just kind of reset that dialogue a little bit, I think would be grateful for that. And forgive us if it got off kilter at all.
How would you like to re-engage that conversation with public safety?
I believe our teams through Rob are collectively working to schedule an in-person working session in the coming 10 days or so.
Okay.
And so I think, you know, my question is just a kind of high level one. And, you know, Mr. Chair, I have a ton of respect for you and the board, and I want to be very clear. And whether you believe me or not, I am not trying to be contentious. And I am not trying to, well, I'm gonna ask a question, and it really comes from a place of just earnest, trying to assess where we are. Because we just feel like we're flying blind a little bit, and we're just trying to get a sense kind of the trajectory. I think, you know, in terms of, we've been working in this building with every office in this building for 2.5 years. We're incredibly grateful to the time each department, police, fire, public safety, Rob's office, the town administrator, everyone in between, you know, all the abutters we've met with, neighbors we've met with. And, you know, and that was all before the formal planning board, you know, we held 2 public meetings that were, you know, outside of the planning board voluntarily. And I believe, you know, our planning board process, our first meeting that you referenced earlier a couple of times was last February. And, you know, I'm not here to suggest we are there or we are, you know, we are done. But as a, you know, in the context of a private applicant and in the context of private property ownership and, you know, a very detailed, exhaustive process, which we have, you know, continued to expend incredible resources on a daily and weekly basis to respond to all of the questions, which, you know, we generally deemed legitimate, or even if they're a bit overreaching, we would rather provide more information than less. But just, in the context of a project which is, fully compliant with the zoning, a project that will generate $3.5 million of tax revenue and be the highest generating parcel in the town, let alone all the positive feedback loop with all the businesses and the Chamber of Commerce and people fueling restaurants and everything else. We're trying to just understand, where we started from the planning board a year ago, it was a 1,600 unit project on the east and west. There were a lot of concerns. Something I will say and I will acknowledge, as it's been referenced throughout the process, I have not lived in Bellingham for 44 years. And I do not, I never would try to suggest that I have. And the only way we are able to hear that, what I will say is for the past 2.5 years, myself or a member of my team have been inside town limits probably 4 times a week on average. And for various meetings, whether they be with neighbors, abutters, people in this building, other stakeholders. And, so we feel we certainly don't have the inherent knowledge that everyone else does. But, we certainly don't feel that we are novices in terms of, many of the dynamics. But most importantly, the feedback we have heard in these meetings and other meetings we have convened outside of this planning board process have been incredibly insightful for us because, we don't know how every road lives and breathes. We don't know that the wind whips around a certain corner or all these things. And so, we view that as input that unless we're here to hear it, we don't know it. And so we feel that we have truly engaged and sought to absorb all of that feedback that's been given. And I think, we're just trying to assess, as we try to decide how to go forward and whether we should just pack up and go home, we're trying to just assess, and I know these processes are not always perfectly linear, but we started at 1,600 units. We heard feedback that was too big. We brought it to 1,450 units, 1,300 units, 900 units, 800, we got to this point. We heard feedback that we should get rid of the east parcel in total, not clog up Rentham Road with, additional traffic. There were wildlife concerns. There were woodland concerns. There were, a whole host of other concerns. I believe there were 47 points from the traffic peer reviewer, which we collaboratively closed out with them. And, water and sewer, I know there's some dimensional items outstanding, but, the water and sewer capacity and plans have been confirmed. The stormwater and civil ask of us, which I think we're ready. I believe we've submitted it to the town and we're ready, or next week, but all of the borings that we were asked to do, which was an incredible scope of work. They, they confirmed that the groundwater is not an issue and is very sufficient and, overly compliant. And I'm just trying to understand, from the board's standpoint, are we at least making forward progress? Because sometimes, and I don't mean this in any cavalier way, it feels like every time we're in front of the board, we're still back at that first meeting in February. And so I'm just trying to assess in the board's opinion, and we're not asking for a vote tonight, but from the 1,600 units to the 800 units, from water, sewer, civil, traffic, acknowledging explicitly that public safety remains a key outstanding item. But we're just trying to understand, are we closer today to the finish line than we were a year ago? And, trying to start to ascertain what that path looks like from here. Because I think the open-ended uncertainty is something that, as a private entity incurring an incredible amount of expense, is something we need to assess. And so it would just be helpful direction for us. And I'm sorry for the long-winded, but it's an earnest question because I think we've sought to work in good faith. We have incredible respect for all the board members and the board. And I think a lot of the guidance and impact and input and feedback you guys have given us has been incredibly valuable. But we're just trying to assess because, it's hard for us to gauge.
I'll speak for myself as one member. I don't make evaluations until all the evidence is in and all the presentations are in. I'm still waiting for all the presentations to come in. You mentioned public safety. We're not there yet on public safety. And there's a lot more things that I know we've asked that you're gonna present in the future. I'll answer it that way. So I'm still waiting to hear on a bunch of topics that we need to discuss.
Would you acknowledge that many topics have been addressed?
I'm waiting for all the evidence to come in. I heard water tonight was discussed. We talked about a bunch of different topics. Okay, the topics have been discussed. From this one board member, I'm waiting for all the evidence to come in for decisions. Phrase it that way.
Thank you.
From this board's perspective, I understand, I'm hearing you're not wanting an answer of yes or no. Yeah, is this ready to go? It has been a very collaborative effort. There are a lot of things that have changed and it's been a moving project. And yes, there have been great positive results of that collaboration with all the other departments. Now, there's still the public safety aspect and the water and sewer. I mean, there's still a lot more to come. And obviously that has to continue, that type of collaboration. And Ernest, you guys have been working in good faith with the departments. And I think, see that as a positive.
We appreciate it. Even the perspective, from Chairman Devine and you, Mr. Roach, it's helpful. Yeah, we appreciate the perspective and the acknowledgement.
Okay, do we,
No, I think all of us should.
if you have some element to make,
Yeah.
please, feel free.
I'm gonna pick up on something you said earlier, and you've already referred to. This being a baseball game, we still have some more innings to go before we decide, what we want to do. I think we've made great progress. I think we have a collaborative approach. I think, that's what we are. We still need some more answers. As I told you probably half hour ago, my mind's not made up. I want to hear all the information and make it, proper decision.
Appreciate, and I will say, at a personal level, appreciate you remembering the initial analogy from our first meeting a year ago. I agree, we're not in the ninth inning yet.
No, let me pick up on that. I don't think we're going to extra innings.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Not even with a runner on second.
Oh, I don't want to know that. I don't like that.
I don't either.
Please.
Well, thank you, Mr. O'Connell.
You're welcome, sir.
And Andrew, I gave you my perspective a couple meetings ago. And that still stands. The only quick thing I'll add is that, just realize that this is still, as we look at it now, the largest project that's come in front of Bellingham in its history of residential. And, this, I mean, when something like this goes up, it's here for generations. You can't say oopsie after the fact. So that's why, we're all have a heightened awareness about it. But it doesn't change the way we go through the process. It just gives us a heightened awareness of it. And, for me and the rest of them, we all, we'll look at this objectively, just like we do every other one. So maybe you might not feel that way, but I can promise you, that's what we do.
Well, I appreciate it, Mr. O'Gara, and I'll just say, we wholeheartedly agree and acknowledge that, a project of this scale warrants scrutiny, due diligence, and, a deliberate and measured approach. And, thanks for everything, all the time. Everybody's dedicated to this personally and professionally.
Rob, where do we want to go from here with this? I think it's got at least public safety back.
Yeah, I mean, first meeting in March, okay, March 12th. And we can verify with, internal meeting, and we can figure out what the topic will be on the 12th, because it might be civil, it could be something else.
Okay.
We're ready to be here every day, all day, and meet with anybody at any time, if invited,
You don't have to be invited. That's the nice part about town hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we don't have to worry about a deadline decision being special.
Nope, it's a special permit,
All
so.
right, so you're requesting that an extension to the 12th. of
Continuance.
March. Continuance to the 12th of March. Okay.
I'll make a motion.
We can just do that.
Just to continue, yeah, motion to continue to March 12th.
All right. Motion made by Bill, second by Marty. Marty, would you like to
Marty, I.
So I,
Thanks, so pass this way, zip, and we'll see you along that. Well,
gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the chiefs and Jesse for coming in, and thank you. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. Bye. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. O'Connell.
Thank you much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So you've got a couple business items. We've got. It's 239 Maple Street, formerly 0 Maple Street. Nick Moynihan's here. Nick, if you want to step up, I'd give the overview, and then the other item is for regarding the inclusionary housing for North and Blackstone Street. Ernie Fatera's online. Ernie, I know it's late. Hang in there, please. We'll try to get to you quickly. You're both gluttons for punishment, so apologies. But so 0 Maple Street, which is now has an address as 239 Maple Street. I'll pull up the decision very quickly, but if you recall, I think everybody, Marty, I don't think you were on the board. Patrick, you definitely weren't here, but 230 or 0 Maple Street was for relatively small industrial building. And I'll let Nick explain what he wants to do, but essentially a couple of the things contradict some of the conditions that were made and discussed quite a bit. So essentially what this is just a request to modify the decision to either amend, strike, whatever you want to do for, I'll show you the 2 conditions of approval. So first one, this wants to work. It's 2 conditions. So condition 4, if you recall, it was the outdoor storage of fleet vehicles, equipment, and or materials is prohibited. Tenant shall conduct all work within the proposed building and keep doors shut while conducting work within the proposed building in order to limit noise emitted from the development. And then the other one is 7, no tenant shall be a retail sale establishment as listed in the town of Bellingham zoning bylaws. That was associated with the concern with the site distance was adequate, but there was a little bit of concern with the dip on the bridge going over 495, and the curb cut was close to that bridge. So that was, I think, the reason why, just to limit the traffic going in and out. Nick, if you want to go over maybe what you're proposing to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure you guys don't really know us yet, but the company's Quality Fleet Service, we're a construction equipment dealership out of Western Mass and now in Brockton, which our plan is to move from Brockton to here. But when it comes to traffic and an equipment dealership, like mine especially, it's not like what you think of when you think of a car dealership. The people that show up daily for, to look at a piece of machinery, you're probably talking 1 human being a week, because sales on construction equipment is done in the field. All of my sales team is in the field, right? Because it's not like you're coming to the site to, test drive a car, right? When you say one of you guys wants to buy an excavator or a loader or something, it gets trucked to your site for you to demo. So traffic impact is, my 10 employees driving in the morning and leaving in the afternoon, with the occasional. Realistically, we probably get 3 to 5 cars a day at our bigger facility in South Hadley, with just people coming to pick up. I need to service my machine. I need filters, that kind of stuff. But it's super, super low traffic. And the site design, as you've seen, I'm sure, is it's a pull in, drive around, pull back out. So there's no, backing into street, any of that stuff. So it's very, very minimal impact to the street and traffic.
Okay, questions from the board?
One thing I will just share too, is there was more information that was submitted from Rich Gordon, he's the current owner, right? Yeah. So, and he was actually the applicant when this was in front of the board. So he submitted, there was a couple items associated with this this use. So if you recall, let me just share this. There was parking in front of the building and behind the building. Bear with me for 1 second. So there was parking in front and behind, and one thing that needed to be done with this, because the site was pretty limited in size, and this is pretty common. Chief, there's a truck turn analysis that I'll be putting up too, so.
No worries.
So initially, the parking was here where my cursor is. That's where that jut out is, and then I believe the parking in the front was along this front curb line because there was some proposed overhead doors in the front of the site, and I think in the back. So in order to accommodate the the equipment coming in on a truck, the applicant has shifted the parking, and you issued, it was a special permit, the flexible parking special permit.
To reduce.
Oh, woke me up. It's a flexible parking special permit to allow a reduction in parking, which Rich Gordon submitted this plan just to show that it's the same number of parking that was allowed in the flexible parking special permit. There wasn't a reduction by moving anything around. So that was the first thing. And then the other item too, because I know, Chief Miller, I'm sure you're very interested to know how circulation is around the building. This is not the right one. So this is with the low bed trailer, which is much larger, Chief, and you'll see the dimensions of the fire truck. If I can share my screen. I am really struggling. I am so sorry. What was that?
First time with the computer.
Yes.
Ooh,
Wow.
excuse me, that was public.
I'll pay for that tomorrow.
He doesn't care.
I'll pay for that tomorrow.
So the truck turn analysis you can see on the right-hand side is the low bed trailer that would be trucking in the equipment, which it fits around. This one shows, it doesn't show the parking on the side here, but that won't be affected. And then you can see here that, this is the outline and the dimensions for the fire truck that was used in the initial submission, which is much, much smaller than the low bed trailer. So so this is the information that was submitted as part of this modification request. So essentially, I don't know if the board wants any additional information. Essentially, you need to make a determination if this is a major or minor modification. And then, if it's major, then, it would require a public hearing. If it's minor, you can make a determination tonight. If you need more information.
Ask away.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I get, just because I wasn't here at this, I remember it going on, because I watched a lot of these from Zoom. I know the concern from the 495, the entrance there, was a consideration to have it on this side?
Yeah, there was. The issue is the grades. So,
When you come,
yeah,
it starts sinking quickly here, was that the concern?
correct. So it would be a
Okay.
pretty significant grade in the driveway if you accessed. A matter of fact, there was an initial proposal where there were two curb cuts, so like an in and out only, and then the site layout was reduced to accommodate it. I think there was some wetland stuff, some stormwater stuff.
Yeah, on the left side.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
was just
Yep,
the
all right,
one
that's right.
curb cut.
I mean, being that you're just shuffling parking in all reality, I mean, the retail, I understand it's minimal retail in terms of signing.
We just
paper.
have to have a place for people, like when you
Pick up
say, like,
parts.
I don't have any job for this to go to, pick up parts, and just a central hub for people to come to, right? And a place to work on the machines. And where we can have some machines out front, so it looks like something.
Can you pull up the language from conditions again?
Yeah. Not change. At this point, it's not me, it's the computer, I swear.
Okay.
All right. So condition 4 and conditions,
Um,
7, yep.
we worked hard on these with the applicant. My feeling is what you're proposing is not consistent with, item 4. And I think it's not a minor concern. We were very concerned about equipment being there, equipment being stored on site. I think what we approved had limited impact for the neighborhood, visually and traffic wise. I think what you're proposing is not the same. And I don't know if I would have approved this proposal last time. The fleet storage, are you gonna be storing, you're gonna have equipment there, correct?
Yeah, brand new construction equipment.
Okay. We didn't want any equipment there stored overnight. That was one of our big concerns. Correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
wasn't at that meeting.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I want to see if we can, come to a
So
consensus.
you're planning on storing equipment outside the building, your fleet stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever looked at construction equipment,
Yeah.
tracking metal pads inside the building every night is. you know,
Yeah,
you
so
don't
that was one of our major concerns with this project was that, you know. We were talking no pallets outside, no this, no that, the fleet storage, how many trucks you'd have. The discussion we had with the applicant was, how many trucks would you be able to store? Well, we wouldn't get so many parking places and
Right.
things like that, but it was something we didn't want to be developed into a.
So we kind of do it like we do now is, I mean, I guess you don't really know us, but, anything that would be stored outside is usually stored behind the building because what you want in the front visible is brand new and
Yeah,
nice.
so I'm noticing that the trucks on the drawings with the swept path analysis. Those are carriers, right? So what type of equipment are you actually putting on there? Are they forklifts? Are they, what type of equipment?
Construction equipment.
Can you
So
define that a little bit more?
Yeah, excavators,
Yes.
loaders.
Okay, so those would be the things parked outside.
Mhm.
Okay, so I,
Or
I, for
they're not
sale.
moving around the.
Right, yeah, you don't move them, you leave them.
Yeah, so I guess you've answered my question and to me it's. We're here to decide whether it's a major or minor, and I guess I'm to the point of saying that this is not consistent with what we were talking about at the time. So I guess I'll ask for a vote after Steve has questions and Patrick has questions, but.
I don't know if I have questions. I mean, it may not be consistent, but if it's changed, is
I
it?
think, not to interrupt, I think maybe when Rich applied, he just wasn't quite sure what we did, maybe at the time, because it was a build to suit and he had the area that worked for me. And he had, a building in the size we wanted on the square footage, and the layout and the land mass that we were looking for with access to the highway. And, that's kind of why we're all, him and myself are all invested in this.
Nick,
So.
when did you discuss with, did Rich, or I don't know who approached who, but Rich already had an approved building essentially, right? It was marketed.
Yes, yep, but it was just a building with no said use, I think, maybe at the time.
Yeah, so what was approved was it was a.
Square footage on a piece.
Correct, and one of the things that was a concern, we've had a couple issues in town with its outdoor storage of materials. This is a little bit different of a case because it's actually more of, it's not really a contractor yard, it's equipment sales essentially. Which is similar to a contractor yard, just new equipment instead of.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's,
Stuff.
it's,
So-
because across the street is, you know, material storage, and then the Mass Diesel, we're like that, but with different machines.
Yeah, and I think
It's not quite.
all I'm getting at is I
high
think
storage.
this approval occurred well before I think you were involved with the
Yes.
current applicant and, you know, I mean, the current owner, which, you know, current owner probably should have done a little due diligence on the approval.
Just another example of, you know, if we were back when this was going through and I saw the car carrier or the truck carriers or the equipment carriers that were there, we would have asked, well, what's your plan for, you know, you're gonna pull all the way into the site? You know, do you have, you can see that you've got enough room to go around the site and stuff like that, but there would have been a lot more questions as far as pulling into the site, pulling up to the site, you know. Construction equipment is not a single car or a van. It handles differently. I don't need to tell you.
What do you
that.
drive it at? I mean.
I'm driving, we would have vetted this differently going into this.
Sure.
We would have vetted it differently than what your use is. That's, you
And I
know,
think it's fair to say the conditions would have been different,
the conditions,
based on what he
the
was.
conditions would have been different and yeah. And
Well, I think what you're saying, Mr. Chair, is, you know, there's some concerns that you probably want to vet a little bit more, which, I mean, I guess that's where the major modification comes into play, where you kind of open up just the public hearing process and to get any information you need.
How many pieces of equipment would be out
That
there?
was gonna be my question, yeah.
But- Literally a handful, behind the building and in front of the building, I don't know, 10. And but we're talking mini excavators, that's like smaller than a Volkswagen Bug, you know, the original.
To your point, the size of these are,
Yeah, they range, right? So the larger machines are, you know, not, you know, nearly as big as we'll use a fire truck, a ladder truck, right? So our biggest machine is not as big as that, and our smallest machine is the size of this square
okay,
table. You know what I mean? The whole point of having the machines outside is to breed awareness,
no, I get it.
you know, that's driving.
yeah, if you were coming in here and saying that you were even selling cars, you'd need a different permit for that.
Well, yeah, so what I've experienced in multiple different towns is, I don't know, I didn't start this one from the beginning. I came in to a piece that was quasi ready to go, so that's exciting for me, so I could speed up my whole process, because I've been down this road with Bolton and Marlboro and Lancaster, but it never seems as though there is a wording for zoning for construction equipment, right? Because when a lot of the zoning was written, so it seems, there's always a provision for farm equipment, which this one might even have that, and that's far closer in usage than an automotive. Right, so that's what I've seen in towns, in all of those towns, there's never construction equipment sales, there's never a zoning for it, ever.
Then you're in Brockton right now. Do you have other locations?
Yeah, South Hadley.
South Hadley. Okay. Patrick, do you have any other questions? other
That was the
than
only
one
question I
that-
had, and that's been answered, so thank you.
Okay. We're gonna wait,
Wait for Rob.
yeah, I think with Rob, I'd like to have Rob in the room.
Yeah. Chief, do you have anything while?
No.
I'm here, not as well?
Nope.
Good, thank you.
Here's just a comment. We had a lot of, not a lot, but we had public input on this. And what we were looking at back then is different than what would be proposed now. One thing I did appreciate that you just clarified was the size of the equipment. I was imagining much bigger, gigantic equipment.
Oh, we make it, don't get me wrong, but, you know, the site is not conducive to that.
Okay,
But you don't, to that point, we don't know, you know, if we were going through a regular process a couple months ago, we knew you were the tenant. We might have put some stipulations in there, working with you,
Yeah,
but we didn't.
that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, but so. I don't know, is there any other questions from the board? Okay, then I think I'd entertain a motion on this one. And I'll let the motion maker make the motion.
Okay,
Is that?
Well, I'm hearing different, I'm hearing there might be some differences.
So you're saying that you want somebody to make a motion for if you prefer
If this-
major?
Well, this is gonna be whether this is a minor modification or a major
okay,
modification.
what I'd be willing to do is make a motion that we poll the board to get each person's
Okay,
input
then let's,
on minor or major. Now,
okay, we don't need we need a
Just
motion
make-
for that.
Somebody
Why
just
don't-
make
why
a
don't you-
motion, please.
I thought you wanted like a roll call.
Okay, let's open it up for discussion.
How about I do this? Since we all can agree that this would have been vetted a little bit differently, then I'll make a motion that this is a major modification.
I
Because it was
will
gonna be vetted differently.
second.
All right, so we have a motion, it's been seconded, and I'll ask for the vote, starting with Steve.
Steve,
Bill,
Bill, aye.
Marty, I.
Okay, so we've decided that this is a major modification. And I guess the process continues from there.
Correct, because it would require a public hearing. Let me reach out to you and Rich to kind of figure out the next steps. All right. Okay, perfect. So, okay, good. All right,
Sounds good.
all right. Thank you, Nick.
No problem.
yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
You. All right, so that's that. For.
Thanks, Dave.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Chief.
Have a good night, Steve. So the next thing, Ernie, welcome. I hope
Thank
you had
you.
extra coffee tonight. So.
I'm wide alert. I'm ready to go.
We've gone to midnight before, so.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
It's still way under the line.
We're way under the line.
welcome.
Yeah, well, we're gonna push it to midnight tonight. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I'll give a quick update on what this is about and I'll hand it over to Ernie. So Ernie is the developer who actually acquired the North and Blackstone Street townhouse project. If you've driven down there, that was approved back in, I think, 2023. Ernie's been working on that construction and come together, quite well, I believe, right, Ernie? So.
Yes.
Yeah, so now part of that special permit required inclusionary housing. We have a 10% requirement and that requires a special permit through the planning board. Now Ernie's working to get the information to the state, because I believe it's Mass Housing that gets the application. We have the information associated with the special permit that I'll actually share. But really, I think that the big discussion tonight, and Ernie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but really, typically, when we've looked at these sites, usually, and actually per our requirements, there's a clause that you have to distribute the inclusionary units to be in line with how the units as a whole are distributed on the site. And what that comes down to is, if there's a triplex development, usually you want a mixture of end and middle units as inclusionary. Ernie is requesting, which I'm pulling up the plan that was submitted. He has two middle units that he's proposing, which isn't exactly in line with what you, the board, has approved in the past. So really, I think in order to get the application to the state, he just wants verification to see if this could work with the two middle units or if it makes sense to do middle and end. Ernie, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I can pass it over to Ernie.
Yeah, Ernie, why don't you?
He can
Tell us
confirm
what you're trying to do.
confirm or deny what I've just said.
Yeah, Rob, thank you for teeing that up. Yeah, for really helpful for context. So I would suggest that there's a slight difference from what you were saying and what I'm looking to have evaluated. So the Bellingham local action units bylaws from April 2024, I think it's page 21, states that the unit shall be situated so as not to be in a less desirable location than market rate units in the development. And I think so typically it might be perceived that a mix of end and middle units in a triplex would meet that definition. And at one point, I had the same mindset. I was recently at a multifamily conference, and it was mentioned the benefits of having the middle units as being the ones that are um, designated the affordable units. And the four key reasons for that was one focused on the energy efficiency and the lower cost of heating and cooling. So middle units, they're the heated and cooling space is uses shared walls on both sides. So this provides some natural insulation and reduces the heat loss, reducing the bills in New England in particular. And that results in a 10 to 20% lower cost for heating and cooling. And for people that are budget conscious and looking for affordable units, that especially in, you know, nowadays makes a difference for affordability. The second one is it the modern code now requires that there's a high sound blocking rated walls between each unit. So the party walls at my project, they're thick, they're insulated, um, and they provide better acoustic privacy than the end units actually do because the end unit faces Blackstone and even the entrance. And um, and then on top of that, there's less impact from wind and inclement weather. So the middle unit actually provides a quieter and more serene living experience for people. And then the third reason was focused on like being centralized in the community. So the middle unit has the ability to be more social with the neighbors on the left and the right, whether they're out front or hanging out in the backyard. And whereas if you're in the end unit, you can feel a little bit more isolated. And then the fourth reason for why it was mentioned that middle units are as desirable, if not more, is that there's also a safety component here. Um, and because there's less, there's less of a chance that someone is breaking in, there's more eyes on the units, even just from a health standpoint, because of that connection. So while the town bylaws in the past perhaps have been interpreted as that it needs to be a mix of the units. The way I read it says it just needs to be it can't be less desirable than other locations and the market rate locations. So based on these four factors, it could be perceived that or construed that the middle offering a plan with middle units would still meet the town requirement of having units that are as desirable as market rate units from a location standpoint. So just wanted to have a discussion and get your thoughts and see if this would be suitable to submitting a plan that would have middle units.
Okay, so I have an opinion, but I'll open it up to the board.
I'll start. The only reason I'm gonna start is we have triplexes in Crystal Springs when we added the 21 units 11 years ago. And back then, we did allow builder, Loviser, they were all gonna be middle units at the time. He ended up utilizing different units off property to meet the criteria for the 10%. But the proposed went through as they were going to be middle units because the cost differential between the two of them at the time, I think was less than 3% of full market value. So it was an appropriate accommodation between the two. The amenities are the same, central layer, parking garages and things of that. And by looking at this building, and I can attest, I am a middle unit of my building, and the heating and cooling is much more cost efficient by being a middle unit. So for affordable housing, I don't see a problem with it in this manner being proposed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question would be, why wouldn't you? No, why wouldn't you want to do it?
So I'll answer that question, then, if it's a question to the board.
Yeah.
So the most recent one, we had this discussion. And it was one of our
Discussion.
one lively discussion, and it had to do with, I believe it was the golf course, former golf course in town, that's not there anymore, that's not built on. And the discussion was that if I was going to purchase one of these buildings, I would be looking for one that wasn't as noisy as having two neighbors next door. Now, I understand you're saying that, soundproof walls and all that, but to me, that was one of the important pieces, is that, it's a mixture. You got some in the middle, you got some on the end. Somebody might be appealed to something like he's commenting on, and Marty commented about lower heat. Somebody else might be more interested in not having neighbors on both sides. And first of all, Ernie, I applaud you for actually stating the bylaw the way you did. I interpreted it a little differently than you did, but I had it ready to read out loud. I see that as not, as you said, not to be in less desirable locations. And I mean, that to me was, a mixture of all. So I understand, I heard what you said and what your argument was. I just see it differently. I see that, to me on this topic, and we can talk about the amenities in a minute, but to me on this topic, spreading it out over the entire site, I think is what we've done in the past. And I think my interpretation of that bylaw is that it should not all be in the middle. And we've held other applicants to that recently, as such, but that's my opinion.
Not to cut you off,
Go
but
ahead.
let's talk about locations tonight,
Yep.
amenities. This is just general discussion for the locations.
So the amenity list that we got was concerning to me also.
Okay.
So.
We're just talking about location.
Before we issue the special permit.
Yeah, this
that's
is
gonna-
general discussion.
Okay.
Special permit will.
We were not voting on a special permit.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is to get the mass housing application in, and then the nice thing is discussing this now when Ernie comes in for the special permit, which I think will be very, very, very soon, potentially next meeting. It can be a much simpler discussion. So.
Okay, Steve, would you like to weigh in? Yeah, he answered a question, but I think it was your time still.
If I'm being honest, I'm kind of ambivalent a little bit. I mean, Marty, you live in the middle. It comes down to personal preference, right? And my preference may not be somebody else's preference. And if someone wants it, they get it. They don't want it, they don't. But it's there if they do. So I guess that's my comment.
Patrick, you won't be voting on this, but, well, I guess
Well,
this isn't here, actually.
So it's not an
We're not
actual
voting
vote
tonight.
on a special permit tonight,
Questions about that, but
Yeah,
but
I will,
this is a discussion to a special permit, so I would say, Patrick, in this case, I see there's 4 members that may very well be split, so what I would recommend is if you're discussing this, what I would actually probably recommend Liz recuse herself on it, and we can have Patrick vote on the special permit, which is allowed.
Well,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes.
You're gonna get a vote a lot faster than a lot of the rest of us did.
Probably the fastest ever.
Yeah, probably. So that makes sense when it comes time to vote on the special permit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Do you have?
Very quickly, my opinion, Steve, I'm kind of in agreement with you on this. It's personal preference. I do have some other concerns with the appliances that have been mentioned. I understand that's not part of this discussion.
Yep.
And that's fine, but just generally speaking, I don't see much of an issue with having it be the middle unit.
Can I ask the applicant, when you sell these, is there a price differential between the middle unit and the external unit?
Sure.
Like, for example, if you go over to the next one over, 13, 15, and 17, is there a difference between 15 and 13 and 17?
Yes and no.
If
The
you were to put the same amenities in
Yeah,
that.
right. The middle unit is they're about 200 square feet smaller than the end units. So as a result, the there's a price difference because it's technically smaller units. Ironically, that actually makes the price per square foot for the middle units higher. Um,
So you're
it,
saying that the middle units are actually smaller. So to me,
there's
that's against what we're trying to do with the bylaw in itself. Is that you're putting that in, you're putting smaller units as inclusionary. As opposed to, including them all. So you're purposely picking smaller. One could argue the applicant is picking smaller units as the inclusionary housing.
But let me ask you this, what's the issue with that?
Because
I'm just asking out of, I'm missing something, but.
the intent of the bylaw was that the units would not be different, like kind quality. And because you're doing two middle units that are perceived, I want to choose my words carefully, not as desirable as an end unit. The feeling, I think, in a couple of board members is that at least one of the units should be an end unit. Because they have to be similar, in scope. And, we got very specific at the Bungay Brook.
Yeah, can I piggyback off that? So it's a little bit hard to visualize with a triplex development because when you're talking about middle units and end units, obviously if there's a square footage difference, that is a very big indication of there is a differential between the units. But to better kind of grasp the inclusionary housing bylaws is if we look at an actual single family subdivision where you have four different housing styles. The intent of this is to make sure that you have if you have colonials and ranches, and the colonials are 4,000 square feet, the ranches are 3,000 square feet. The mechanism is to make sure that the applicant is not putting in only inclusionary ranches because they're cheaper to build, smaller square footage. You have to make sure that it's in kind, which is why, there is obviously a differential between middle units and end units, which is why the board has always in the past made sure that there was a variation between middle units and end units to meet the intent of the bylaw. So, even if it's a preference thing, it's more about just making sure the distribution is in line. And the other part of it too is going back to more of the comparison with the single family houses. If you're driving down the street and every single house that is one story are the inclusionary units, and then every other house is a 2-story, and those are the market rate, that is a clear differentiation from the market rate, and that is the entire intent for the bylaw, to make sure that that is not happening. So that's where the whole end versus middle comes in.
So are you saying that as it relates to the bylaw, this is a black and white issue? or is it discretionary decision?
Discretionary. I'm gonna bring up a Hartford Village. You tried to build more units in there and use Crystal Springs as inclusionary and said they were the same, oh, this condo, so they're the same.
Well, that's a little different.
No,
because
no, it's not.
That's off-site though, right?
It doesn't matter. It's still, you're trying to compare and it's, has to be equal-minded. And we went through the square footage, central layer, garages,
Yeah.
everything else. And oh no, this board fought us tooth and nail because we didn't want inclusionary to be brought over to Crystal
It
Springs.
wasn't this board.
So.
No, the planning board.
Yeah.
Okay.
I said the planning board.
Yeah,
I didn't say this board. I said the planning board.
This board.
I have no idea when that was being discussed. I don't even know what you're.
You weren't here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
so,
But no, it got brought up and that's where
Yeah.
part of this came in, that it has to be of equal. 200 square feet is minimal. That happens within any type of complex of multifamily living. You brought up the single family. Absolutely on the single family, you can't use all one-story ranches as the inclusionary and you have colonials as the other. This is very minor, very minimal. You're talking 2 units. I don't see for them to go to the Mass Housing Authority to get the inclusionary to be included. Mass Housing Authority would agree to this.
well, you don't know. that,
So-
but-
so.
Enough of the units that
So
And
I've
I'm
been
just
looking at my.
saying, I'm not trying to argue with you, Marty, even
Yep.
though you're getting a very, quite feisty.
Well, there's been a lot of,
Yeah, so I think we'll probably end up disagreeing on this, but what I see the difference on this is that the first 2 votes I took on the planning board were inclusionary housing, and I think both of those were off-site inclusionary housing, where they were rehabbing locations that were off-site. So to me, like kind and, okay, well, it was ballpark close. So to me, that was like, all right, they don't want to do it on-site, which is one of the options. They want to do it off-site. So we kind of worked through what the off-site comparisons were to what was in the site. That, to me, that's a little different than this. And again, we're gonna end up seeing it differently, but I was just gonna explain why I see it differently. I see it differently is that we might all have different preferences, but somebody's gonna have a preference for the end. Someone's gonna have a preference for the middle where it costs less energy. But I think what my interpretation of the inclusionary bylaw is that we want to have it equal across the board. So by actually saying, okay, you can't do a smaller one, even no matter what size smaller it is, as all the smaller ones can't be in there as your inclusionary, we're trying to keep an even playing field. And I guess that's where I'm coming from. And I know we probably disagree on this, but I wanted to explain where I was coming from.
But my question is still,
Go ahead.
is this a matter of it either meets the bylaw or it doesn't, and that's how the decision's made, or is it discretion in this?
I think it's the interpretation.
It's the interpretation.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah, it's the
interpretation of the
interpretation.
law and the even distribution of.
Yeah, so-
The units.
So the way
You just said, even.
Yeah, I mean, if,
So-
is there
I
a
have a
difference
quick
between the
question.
middle unit or the end unit?
Yeah,
There's a
if I'm gonna-
difference, So you should do.
So to answer your question, and I'll read the bylaw, this is 240-179B. Okay, and it starts out minimum design and construction standards for affordable units. Affordable housing units within market rate developments shall be integrated with the rest of the development and shall be compatible in external design, appearance, construction, and quality of materials with other units. So to me, I feel putting them all in the end, that's probably the wrong one. Putting them all in the middle, to me, when they're smaller, why would a developer do that? I'd like to just keep it as an even playing field. That's what I see the difference is.
Well, regardless of them being smaller or larger price point, what you have they're
Yeah.
they're different.
They're different.
They're different.
They're different.
So you gotta.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if the flavor is there's 3 that say that, you know, doing the two middle units is fine, then
Yeah, so,
let's just move on and, you know, Ernie can forward the application to Mass Housing and.
okay,
Okay. Yeah, and maybe to make people feel comfortable, there's also three other middle units that are same size. So it's not that the two that I've selected are smaller and the other three are larger. The other three middle units are the same size. And the outside of the building, whether all the buildings gonna be the same. So um the two middle units that I've selected, you're not from the outside, whether you're in the front or in the rear, you won't be able to tell the difference.
okay, so we're here tonight to look at whether this would fit underneath what we're trying to do as a board. So let me say this, that special permit does give the chairman the ability to ask the associate to vote. At this point, I'm gonna do that pending Liz has got the ability to make it up and vote if she cares to. But I really do want, I'm gonna ask you to vote on this, but I'm gonna give her the differential to make it up if she cares to.
You don't even have to take a vote, because it's not the special permit. This is a discussion on the locations, and I think it's been established that 3 out of the 5 are okay with the two middle units. So,
Can we have a show of hands to, if you're okay with the middle unit?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the case then.
we're good. All right, Ernie?
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you,
perfect.
sir.
Thanks, Ernie.
Have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, I know we got minutes. What other business before that?
Just minutes.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? I did read through them. No, I didn't.
Yeah, this is the no-brainer one.
Okay.
What was it, a page?
Regional Florida.
There's 2 pieces there.
All right,
I just, before we vote on that, I just want to thank the recording secretary for the job she does.
Katie Duquette.
It goes unnoticed a lot.
Shout out to you, Katie.
Katie, thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Is that official for the minutes for next time? I think it is.
What?
I think the recording secretary should record the fact that the board thanked.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
All right. So.
all right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Made by Bill, second by Marty. And we'll start the vote with Marty.
Matty, aye.
Bill, aye?
So,
Okay, so the motion passes
For
4-0.
to close the meeting. Adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second? Second by Steve, made by Marty.
Matty, aye.
Bill, aye.
I don't know. No,
I will get my.
Are you abstaining?
it's kind of, I got 2 more hours in
I'm
it.
abstaining.
Yes.
All right, so the motion passes 4-0, and thank you, everybody, for your time.